Oh, I'm in charge, but I've forgotten the buttons. Where are we? Here we are. There we go.
Not my fault. I wasn't driving.
Welcome to another Humpday Q&A.
I'm having a bad hair day.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So yes, Simon.
So yes,
put some. I don't know. Hey, just got back from IO Connect Miami last week. We got back. I walked out of the car. I am dragging my luggage down the walk, and I had to stop and put a message out to the group saying I was glad to be back in Cleveland because it was 77 degrees, 25% humidity, sunny, and 0 chance of rain. While in Miami, it was like 90 to 110% humidity and thunderstorms. So everybody told me what they thought of me after that, which is nothing I can say on this show.
Just imagine the condensation like on your skin for that kind of heat. Like
it was, I actually did tell somebody it's easy to stay hydrated in Miami. Just breathe through your mouth.
Wow. All right, let's move on.
In fact, we've got somebody coming on in just a little bit who knows all about Miami. But
let's get on with the do's and don'ts, and then we'll skitch back to that, I guess. Right. Do's and don'ts. Go for it.
All right. Be nice, be respectful, be constructive. It's not Reddit. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive. Come on, this is common sense. Don't advertise or promote yourself. I need a job is not something you should type in here. Don't ask the same question over and over again. Every time we see a question, we move it to the bottom of the list, even if it was asked before. So if your question was next and you ask it again, you're going to go to the bottom of the list and you're not going to be next anymore. Harassment of any kind is not tolerated, misogyny, bigotry, etc., etc. We do share ban lists with the Slacks and other places around. So, yeah, you could end up being on from everywhere. And don't forget to have a good time.
Right, let's do some introductions briefly, and then we'll crack on with the show. So my name's Simon Lightfoot, Flutter Community Leader, CTO at Dev Angels London, and you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
My name is Scott Stahl. I am also a community leader. I organize GDG Cleveland. I have been known to write code in 2 places, one of which is on my own with Good Dog Apps, and the other is underneath of Simon's stairs in his basement.
Not quite. And we also have our resident question magician, Randall. There you go.
Oh,
hey,
hi. Popped in just like that. I was supposed to be holding my dash when I did that. All right, that's fine.
Magic.
I always dance with the dash during the openings and closings, and you guys all know that because if you've been here more than once, you've seen that. I am.
We
I am
see
a
it, you
Dart.
can't, and it's scary.
Yeah. I'm a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert. I answer questions seemingly all day and all night about Dart and Flutter on all the various social media stuff for Flutter, the community people. And for this show, I am the question magician, which means that I am watching the chat, looking for postings that start with Q:. When they start with Q:, I know that's a question that needs to go in our queue. Ooh, bad pun again. But then I will put them in the queue and get the guys to notice that. And that's all I'm doing pretty much the entire show until they bring me back on the screen again, which I will be working behind the scenes most of the time today. So, yeah.
So we'll just swap out halfway through because I think Scott's got to leave after the first.
Yeah, I actually have to leave fairly quickly, but I also did notice something in the chat that I think is really important to put up right now. This is not an official Google event. There is no one here you will see today that works for Google that has the authority to represent Google. No, we are not on the Flutter team. We do not work for Google. Google does not sanction anything that we do here. But they are nice enough to come in every once in a while and be a guest.
Yes,
and
that is really nice.
Also, as we said, we've got Google developer experts here, and we actually have some more guests today. So let's bring some guests on. Danielle, welcome to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Yeah. I'm Danielle, and I'm still down here in sunny South Florida. They were talking about Miami a little bit. I didn't get to be down here when they were here. I was actually in the far other end of the U.S. in Seattle last week while all of my friends were down here. So
you're on planes passing by and waving to each other.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly.
Yeah, because when did you get back in? I left Saturday morning.
I got back Saturday night. So,
yep. Totally.
It actually flew into Miami, so same kind of place. If that's where you were.
Same airport.
Thank you,
Jessica. I'll introduce yourself in just a minute, Danielle. But let's bring on our other guest, Steph.
I wanted to say one thing real quick. You can bring her on anyway. Yeah. But the thing I was going to say, I introduce myself, which I lead a team of Flutter developers on Flutter Web, a startup company called Ardley, and I am unique on this call always because I'm one of the organizers of the Flutteristas. Except today, I'm not unique. Go ahead, Steph.
We have Steph.
Hi, I'm Steph. I am a SQL developer by day, but in my spare
Flutter enthusiast.
Flutter enthusiast. In my spare time, I'm on vacation/holiday this week, and so I'm able to be here. And as Danielle alluded, I am one of the co-managers of the Flutteristas, a organization for people who identify as women or non-binary and have a passion for Flutter.
And if you all like, I'm happy to bring other Flutteristas at different times too. If you want.
Absolutely.
Simon's always like, "Can you come on?" I'm like, "I'm working on my day job."
Although I don't know about Jess. I don't know about Jess. I mean, smart ass.
Yep.
And I probably won't be able to answer very many questions, but I'm here.
But Steph, where are you speaking to us from? Isn't it nearby?
I am not very far from you. I am also in Portland, Oregon.
That away somewhere. Well, not Crater Lake, but near me.
You're still in Northeast, I'm assuming.
Yes, I'm in St. John's. Yes. Now people can zero in their ICBMs directly at me. Now they know where I'm at. Yes.
But before we jump into the show, I just want to say that the tickets are now open for FlutterCon. FlutterCon happening on 5th to the 7th of July in Berlin. If you haven't got tickets, you can get them. And we also have some discount codes floating around. So reach out and ask for members of the community, and you never know, you might get a discount. So check out fluttercon.dev. That's my pitch. We're going to get back to the show now. There you go.
All righty. Hey, I'd like, since I'm going to have to go soon, Grogu. Anyway, since I'm going to have to go soon, I wanted to touch on the IO Connect and things that were going on there. It was basically like a happy medium between the old in-person IOs and a dev fest. So it was a little unusual in that way. You had to have been there to really get the feel for it, but it was pretty cool. It's funny because
Yeah.
somebody is saying, what did we learn in the last week? I learned about records and patterns and where I can find a cool code lab to help me learn them, because I sat down with Craig Lebenz and I said, Craig, between work and community stuff, I haven't had a chance to read what's going on with Dart. Tell me about these records and patterns, because I don't know anything. And that was an interesting moment.
Well, by the way, I would point out on that I believe that our off-screen question magician just put out a video on that too.
Nice.
Yes.
I will
yes,
definitely have
Randy
to
did.
check that out.
Linked in the channels from this very YouTube channel, you'll find Randall's channel where you can go get that content. There you go.
Yeah. Another interesting thing was I spoke to somebody with Wear OS on their team. And I was asking, I said, Flutter can release to the Pixel Watch and anything else running Wear OS, but what room have you left us? Because almost anything you could want that works on a watch is coming built in the OS. Right. And it's like they almost didn't leave us room, and all we can do is try to top the default app. But we did figure a few things out. One in particular that comes to mind right now is things for musicians. So anything that would help them, say, tune their instrument or various other things like that. There are openings where we can find things to write for the watch, but it's not going to be easy to find. Make sure you know what's already built in. Had some really interesting conversations. There's a gentleman, a VP, who his passion project is something that I actually asked about. And that is, I was speaking with Stacy Davino, who's big into Android. And it was funny because Stacy was saying the vast majority of cookie cutter apps need to be done in Flutter. It doesn't make sense to not use it. And then we were talking about times to not use Flutter, which led to a question that I asked for a panel, which was, there are times to use Flutter. There are times to use Android. There are times to use Angular. There are times to use all these different frameworks. Yeah, that's Stacy, actually. Stacy is so big in Flutter, they made swag of Stacy wearing her pink shirt.
I think she made it, actually.
Yeah.
Brand, doing some brand stuff, but it's cool. It's cool.
She's also an amazing Flutterista.
Yes. Oh, cool. Stacy's a Flutterista? I did not know that.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Very cool.
Yes, of course she is.
But anyway, the question that I asked was, is there a chart that shows us the strengths and weaknesses of various platforms so we can make intelligent decisions about what to use where? Because clearly, if we're going to do a website, we don't want to do it in Flutter. We want to do it in Angular, right?
No,
you don't want to?
Nope.
I wouldn't do a whole site in Flutter. I'd do a web app.
Those are other conversations for other times.
All right. But in other words, we probably need to expand the chart to other frameworks as well.
I don't have the popular opinion here. I know that.
Okay. But anyway, a chart with the strengths and weaknesses to help us make decisions would be very helpful. And it turns out there's someone at Flutter who this is their passion project. But they said it might not come out for up to a year. So, but there's a whole lot more, lots of videos. Be sure you catch them. IO Connect was very cool.
Right. Well, we put some time in here just to get you your questions in the chat. So as we said below, put your Q colon in front of them and we can get them in the queue. Talking of which, we have a couple already, so we could get started. Wow, someone's really loud.
And actually, this is probably a good time for me to step out because I do have some meetings and things I got to take care of. So
already?
Yeah, I mean, I told you that. I told you I'd be here for the intro. And I was supposed to be here for 10 to 15 minutes. It's now 20.
All right.
Clement always makes me stay longer than I intended.
That's it.
Randall, come bail me out.
To the stage. There we go. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Scott, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye, Scott.
Okay.
Well, of course, this also means then that I both have to watch the chat and be a human being at the same time, and that's a little tricky sometimes. But I'll give it a try. I've done it before.
While you're pulling up the first question, we had an unofficial question. I just wanted to thank Train of Thought for asking about Dorian. My parrot's doing very well, and he's just not out here right now making noise. I've got him
I
inside.
think the joke of Dorian Gray is great. That's an awesome name. Congrats on that one. That's a good one.
Yeah. So that's not an official question, but I still wanted to say thank you for asking it.
Yeah, we take them all.
Right. Well, in fact, I think you can take the first question here. Tell me about Flutter Web.
Yeah, I asked for a follow-up. Let me see if we got anything on that. Just kind of curious about any specifics with it. I mean, Flutter Web is a cool thing, but it definitely has limitations in certain cases, like Scott was alluding to. So I don't see a specific follow-up in there, but I think Flutter Web is a great way to take, for example, the perfect application for it, I think, is where you've got an app that's of limited use, but you want it to be an app. And so people aren't going to install it. So releasing it in iOS and Android is not necessarily going to be a good thing. But you could still write it just like that, put it in web with, being aware of a few of the differences and how they handle, the files and stuff like that. But in general, you can put it up there and it works great. And so it works just like an app would, but it's a link, so I think that's a great use for it. What people kind of talk about with it is because of the way that Flutter Web renders, just like it does on Android and everywhere else, it makes a canvas, writes all the pixels on the screen and stuff. Because of the way it does that, the robots don't know what's going on. And so it becomes very difficult for you to let the Google know what to index with it and whatnot. And we don't have a good solution for that yet. I've got a couple of ideas I'd like to work on when I get the chance, but right now we don't have a good solution for that. And so that's why people just blanket say don't make big websites with Flutter. I think is the big reason for that.
Yeah.
And
I think that SEO problem kind of it's a known problem, right? Like it's not like it's a Flutter only problem. This is the same problem that exists on all dynamic websites that are client-side rendered websites, which is a lot now. And that is, if they don't render within a certain amount of time, then the search engine Googlebot will just pass them by and not index them, or will index them with like rough data, which is just the metadata that's given on the headers of the web page. There's limited amount of time that you imagine, like if you've got this bot scanning every web page, if it takes 30 seconds to load a web page, it's not going to load every web page. There's just not enough time in the world for it to index every web page if it takes that long to load. So the idea here is that you want to send down as much data as you can in the initial request to the server. So this principle is called server-side rendering. And it's basically when a Googlebot, when specifically the user agent of Googlebot requests for a web page, it returns back a pre-rendered HTML, which is what the client-side library would do to reorganize the web page.
Go on. No, I was just going to say, we know that it's a robot when it does it. I just wanted to point that fact out. Yeah. So when the Googlebot is asking for this page, it lets it know that it's a robot. So we have the chance to maybe do what you're saying. Please continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No. It's basically what as I said, and the next problem here is that because we're rendering to our own canvas, what does that mean? Because again, it's not how the operating system detects text. It's a big complex problem. So it's just not like not ideal scenario for SEO basically. There are like lots of people working on the same problem, so it's not new. And we'll see how it goes. I think that's just generally speaking how it goes. But again, it's no problem using it on web apps, things that you log into, things that you use, because you don't have to have it indexed by Google.
And out of the box, that's amazing. It's a great solution for that. Perfect, out of the box right now.
And I will also mention that with the advent, was it 3.10? I think it was 3.10. They now have statically hosted Flutter engine JavaScript files, compiled JavaScript files now. So that the great thing about that is that when you ship your app, if you use those, you don't have to the browser doesn't have to re-download the same file over and over and over again. So we actually get again another optimization level there as well for speed of download and use now.
Also, if you really pay attention to making your site accessible to screen readers
Mhm.
and other instruments. There are a lot of techniques and technologies you can use that already do that, which is already a good thing to do. Then most of the indexers, most of the bots can index that information and that content as well. So pay attention to that. That's everything under the semantic label. So look for semantic as semantics. That's right,
Yeah.
right?
Semantic.
Okay, right.
Semantic.
Yeah. Check that out and all, and just start Googling for all sorts of ways to do that, because that's a known and needed problem to solve.
Right.
So yeah.
I was just trying to find the release notes for that, but if there's some interesting release notes on Flutter 3.10, I'll put the link in the chat for anyone that wants to check it out. Anyway,
All right. So Nauman, if you have other questions other than that, go. If you have something follow up you want specific, let us know.
Yeah, please let us know. Right, we're going to crack on with more. We got loads of questions coming in. My good friend Nick Ford, attendee to the Flutter London meetup. So, does Jenna require a change of thinking, or is there standard patterns for making?
Okay, he had a
easier for publishers.
Yeah.
So this is related to another question. Sorry, have I missed that?
We had contact.
Context.
Let us know before. Yeah.
Context. I'm converting a pre-null safety app to null safety and finding it painful. Turns out a lot of my code relies on things being null if not instantiated. That's not strictly. So I think the null safety migration piece. So first of all, check. We said this last week, but you want to check out 2.19, the previous version, 3.7 of Flutter, and you can use the Dart tooling to help you fix and do the migration. There's a Dart migrate command that will let you help you migrate and mark code. A lot of the time, migration to null safety can just be stick question marks on a lot of variable declarations that can be null. That gets you. That solves this exact problem that you're having here, Nick. You just had a question mark under the type after the type name, and that says it can be null, right? Yeah. That should essentially fix a lot of your code. You'll probably find there's a bunch of places where you're not checking for it to be null, which are actually potential bugs and NPE crashes that your app would have had without null safety. So that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But then generally the gist is that you want to migrate your code and change the way your code works so that it does not rely on the null value anyway. And that way you can be guaranteed a variable is never null, and it can get rid of all the null checks that have to happen every single time that variable is accessed. And that will then speed up your code base.
I specifically use this at times. I use all the time. I use what I call a tri-state Boolean, which is true, false, or it's null. Null means there's no answer yet. And so I can deal with that. It does have these weird things like say, if foo equal true, or things like that you normally wouldn't do. But I use it all the time with stuff like that.
I've been shying away from using values like that. What I prefer to do in that situation is be more explicit and say, okay, here's an enum with the two possible values. So instead of saying I don't know, let's say dark mode. You got dark mode and light mode, right? As the two, and then you may even have a tri-state of system, right? Mm-hmm. So in one sense, you could have a Boolean saying, is dark mode true, false, or null to say system, right? But you're not. But now you're relying on the fact that null is a potential value of true or false, and true or false is not necessarily indicative of what you're trying to explain. So in that situation, you say is dark mode. You probably change that to dark mode setting, and then you've got an enum of dark, light, and system. Right now, you've explicitly carried those things out. Now I can also attach extra metadata to each of those enums and say, okay, its brightness level is this, its system flag is that, or whatever else, all sorts of other metadata along with those headings. And I find that's probably a better way of dealing with it. And then especially when you have, I'll give an example, another thing that was quite common in Flutter before null safety, which was treating your logged out user as null. Right, so you might have a user model, you set it to null, they're logged out because there's no user set. And then when they're logged in, you set that value, that wherever your global state is for the user, and say, okay, now it's set, they're logged in, the UI updates because it's not null, it updates to their profile picture or whatever.
Yeah, but that's the Firebase way. Yeah, I was also going to say that besides a system, dark and light, you might also want a fourth value sometimes, which is unknown.
Yeah.
So like you can always then initialize that variable to unknown, and if nobody has figured out what the real value is yet, you'll know that very clearly.
Which is good overall, but once and by the way, for something like this where you really don't have, it's not really a Boolean question. You aren't really asking is dark. You're asking which mode it is. But if it was I don't know.
Let me just sorry. I just want to get back to what I was talking about because I hadn't finished what I was saying.
I'm sorry.
But my point being that the trick to that kind of scenario where you're using null as a value is to say make a new constant initialization of your model object, like user, with blank set fields like no name, like blank string for the name, a default unknown URL for the profile icon, whatever it is for an empty user. Set that as like a static const empty is a private, as a public member of your model object. So now you have user.empty that you can use anywhere in your app. What's really nice about this, you can just compare your global state user model to user.empty, and if it's empty, then they're logged out. So that treats it exactly the same way as null would be treated, except for you're explicitly saying it's not an empty model, which is really nice because let's say you log out, and this is another problem that would happen when you log out of an app. And because that resets the user to null, suddenly you might get a red screen and red widgets because they're trying to access that as part of the logout process. Well, with the case of empty, you would then get the icon turned to the default icon in that scenario that just explained. The name that was just on their profile screen would go to a blank string, and you can get any errors, it would be a valid state, and then the screen transitions to a logged out state or something like that. So there's a lot of value in having empty sort of model objects as a way of dealing with this null sort of problem.
I want to say thank you. You've not convinced me to never do this, but you've definitely given me ideas of when a good time not to do it is and a way around it. So I think that's perfect. Thank you. One example I wanted to kind of give also, one of the problems with having nullable values is it makes everywhere you use them a pain because you're either and I've got a hot take. I need to publish a blog on this at some point about how we're not really null safe as long as we allow exclamation points and as long as we allow late values, because they're not called MPEs, but they are. That's what they are.
Late initialization.
Late initialization, and also using an exclamation point when it really was null.
There's an interesting thing actually. There's actually settings in the pubspec YAML file which can disable those and actually make them errors to use.
Oh, that's interesting. I will check that out because that's bit me before when there's times where I've just known, at this point in time, it can't be null. So let's just do it. And, of course, then you end up with the nouveau NPE error that you try to unwrap a null value, whatever it says. The other thing, though, I wanted to say is, for example, we're to enable some integration testing and things like that. We've been adding keys to a lot of stuff that we need to be able to get to. So we've been doing value keys off of strings. So I've got a base string, maybe, right? And I wanted to make that base string nullable so that if I'm not going through a testing path, for example, I don't have to use it. And the problem with that is you can't do a value key off of null twice because you'd have the same key on the screen at the same time. And if every time you're doing it, you have to say, if it's not equal to null, then it's value key this, otherwise it's null with a turn error or something. That's a pain. And so what I did with that was I just created a string extension so that that just says that basically it's a value key. I actually make it where you can mangle it at the end. So it's value key dot whatever you passed in as a postfix for it, and it creates a key out of that, and then does a value key of that. Beautiful thing about that is that now if my string is null, question mark dot value key gives me the value key back. And so there's ways to get around having to check all the time. If you make it null, if you make what you're getting an attribute of that null value, then you can do question mark dot, and then you'll still get null or whatever it is, if that's the case.
Did
that make sense? Or did I ramble too much?
No, it made sense. I was just going to say that what I was just talking about. Let's see if I can bring this up on the stream. I'll post a link to this in the chat right now. But basically, there's a bunch of things you can do, in not just the linter rules section, which is what you're probably usually modifying of your pubspec, but
right.
Analyzer section. You can add language and also add extra language options like strict typing and strict raw types, which ensures that you have types and it doesn't infer types, especially when those inferred types are maybe not as strict as they should be. So this used to be called strong mode. There's actually a inference here, strict inference as well, which is these things can really improve the type safety of your code. It used to be called strong mode back in the day, but that's been deprecated now into this strict mode, as they now call it. But again, there is actually under analyzer. I can't remember the heading. I'd probably have to check the heading. But under the analyzer, you can actually add. I think it's errors. I believe there's a field called error. You can go look it up on the site. I won't dig through it now. But you can dig through that and put your lint rule, and then say it's an error. So you can make any lint rule, not just a warning or an info, but an actual error, and it means your code will not compile if that lint rule is in there. Anyway, Steph, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yes, I didn't want to interrupt, so I thought, okay, I'm going to raise my hand. Didn't have a little button. Okay, so did I misunderstand the conversation between Simon and Danielle? Were you saying to not use late, or did I completely misunderstand you?
No, that was. I'm just saying it's dangerous if you use it. You better be careful if you use it.
Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure because I made a note, but I'm like, I'm not going to wait to ask. I'm going to ask you. I was like, I was going to talk to you afterwards, but it's like, no, I'm going to do it here.
I'm just saying it's possible to not have if it's possible to not have instantiated it, you've still got a null error in a world where we believe there's.
But if you're addressing that, then
it's well, no. Here's the difference, right? Is that the static analyzer, because it's marked as late, can give you that information up front when you're developing and can tell you that you can't access this variable now because it's not been initialized yet. But there's certain situations when that cannot be the case, and you're explicitly saying, I know that this is going to be initialized before I use it, so I mark it as late. The problem with that is you could be wrong, right? And at that point, what happens if you try and access a variable before it's got a value set, you'll get a late initialization exception. Which is essentially the same as a null pointer exception, is what we're saying. So
part of the reason I was asking is because I've been, not the rest of the world, but at least 3 of you know that I've been working on, or at least 2 of you, sorry, Randall, at least 2 of you are aware that I'm learning Flame. And so in the documentation, okay, he knew, sorry. Anyway, that in the examples that I've been seeing and things like that, late is used and it's getting set. And so I just wanted to clarify for myself because I don't want to learn wrong.
No, so late in itself is not a problem. It's just you need to be careful about how you're accessing it. A nice way of actually dealing with that problem is to say something like late. You can do something like late and then actually give an initializer. So the really clever trick, and I'm going to mention this now because a lot of people don't realize this. If you use late final, like late final variable equals, and then whatever your initializer is, like say provider.of context blah, right? Now what's going to happen is it's only the first time you access that variable that it then initializes it with the second half, that is looks it up on the context, and then it will never call that function again to look it up because it's final, which means it already has a value. So there's like it's like an inbuilt cache variable if you do late final, which is kind of clever.
But to be clear on that, if you do it that way, and if it's something you could not do in your init state, for example, as long as you don't reference it in your init state, you'll be fine, because when you do reference it, you will have that context or whatever it is you need. In which case, you're fine. So that's it. It might seem that, well, gee, I don't need to say the late part of it. The reason why you have to say the late part of it is so that by the time you use it, it's able to be used.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you very much, because there's got to be somebody out there, either on right now or later, that'll come back and watch this that may have that question, or if I come back to the video.
You'll know. No, it's the other reason you want to do that, of course, is if it's an expensive call that you don't always make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be a reason you could wait for it. You could only call it if you need it, and that way you're not taking up those resources if you don't need to.
So again, it's like for the idea of like provider of or something like that. You're going up the tree and you're only doing that once the first time you access the variable. And then if you're using that multiple times inside the build, let's say, then or in a widget, then you only ever do it the first time, and the rest of the times are going to be referenced in the local variable, so acting it like a cache. All right, let's crack on with some more questions here because we'll be talking about null safety for a whole episode. All right, next question. Sean, what's the most exciting or interesting you've learned about Flutter Dart this past week? I think Scott answered that earlier. Danielle, do you have something that you want to add to that?
I did, and I'm drawing a blank on what it was now. Okay. This is really stupid.
Okay.
This is really stupid. But I learned on Twitter, I think yesterday, that if you put a -e when you create a new project, it doesn't put all the comment stuff in there.
I did not know that either. So the Flutter create command has a -e option on it, and if you specify that, it creates like an empty project. So without the counter, without the comments, without any of that stuff, and I'm like, every time I create a project, I just like highlight, just delete all this stuff. I'm like, finally, there's an option. I'm like, it's been there since day one, and no, I didn't know.
So Flutter create
visibility.
I've always considered the counter app. I've always considered the counter app as being the most heavily deleted app ever. This is like everybody has to delete it.
Interesting enough, there's actually an option there for skeleton app. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah,
and that actually has options of building different types of apps as well. So they are working on it. But again, I think it's kind of that kind of visibility, right? Okay, so what have you learned this week, Steph?
Just to follow up on that, though. Just to follow up on that, I want to say that very good. Was it very good structure?
Analysis.
Very good something. Well, very good command line. That's it. Which has a
CLI.
Which has a very create or something like VG create.
Yeah.
Has their
create.
Templates.
And you have to put,
that's it.
that was what I was going to talk about. So I was using, there's two things that's been going on with me was I'm learning Flame, and I found this really great YouTube video, and he's already on here. It's awesome. I love learning from kids. He's 13 or 14. It's awesome. But yesterday, I have dyslexia. So reading docs is just not good for me for trying to learn something. So I need to see or use something easy. So anyway, I was on Very Good Ventures blog and looking at that. And when I saw their CLI, I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. So I started using that. I got errors last night. So I have to reach out and like, okay, why is this not working? And it was just their starter project, but it was very cool. And I'm excited about it because it basically, when you do their create, it basically builds your project the right way, in their very good template, everything's all set up and all that. I love organization. And so that's what really jazzed me. So I just have to figure out what the error was. So anybody from BGB, I will be contacting you.
And what's great about that very good, sorry, go ahead, Simon.
I was going to say, I suspect it's not been updated for 3.10 yet. So
probably not.
Well, I even tried to go back to an older version and it didn't work. So I'll have to figure it out.
One of the things that inspired me to do was to create I call it CodePad, which is a way of basically building Dartpad, but using VS Code with a really quick startup. And I had to learn how to use Mason. And that's really the key. If you want templates for your code, you want the same thing every time, learn about Mason. It's really simple. And you can have it per projects. You can say, here's the template for all of our providers. Here's the template for all of our views.
And that's what took me to their website was Mason.
Yeah, Mason.
I'd never heard of Mason.
Mason is amazing. Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. So it's like I was peeling the onion back, and it all started because I was watching that Flutter Atlanta video and learning about that, and then working my way up the stream.
And I want to say where I discovered Mason was on Observable Flutter with our friend, what's his name? Oh, no, I'm blanking on his name. Craig Lebenz hosts this show called Observable Flutter. And the Mason dude was on that show. And so I learned about Mason, immediately made CodePad based on that. So it's just a chain, yeah. Just a chain.
Why did you do that to me? You said Mason did, and his name just left my head. Felix.
Yeah, Felix Angelo. Right.
Sorry. Right. And I'm just going to show what I learned. And I was going to say this. We said this week. This is kind of a few hours past this week because it was last show I saw this, but I want to share this to everyone. There's a new index property on iterable.
Yeah.
So every iterable can now be .indexed, and it returns a iterable of a record, which gives you the index and the data, so you can actually iterate through an indexed iteration on a standard for loop. This is brilliant.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Oh wow, because I hate having.
Oh wow, everybody says.
I know. I've wanted this since day one, and I'm like, finally.
How many for each loops have I done, or for whatever in have I changed over to
int I blah blah blah, just so you get the index, right? And it's like I'll just yeah.
And these are even useful. These are useful inside list constructors. Literal list constructors, because you can then have a for loop inside that uses indexed on the thing you're iterating and destructure it already with a pattern match, and you get your indexed and your value that you can then use on your elements of what you're creating in your list or your map. It is awesome.
All right, Sean, I want to update my answer to that.
This.
What did you just learn just now that's the most interesting thing this week? Good.
All right.
I just put the link to the VGV, the Very Good CLI, which is where I started. Somebody had asked about, it wasn't a video that it led me to that, but that link that was just shared is where I started and using it and the command line. One thing that I will mention is that when the blog post, that when you click on the get started, you have to make sure that you put the sub command. So you'll say very good create, and then you have to tell it what you're wanting to create. So because I tried both the Flutter app and then I also did the Flame game because I wanted to see what it builds for that. And then you put the project name and the arguments. So that's listed in the commands when you go on in. So definitely going to be looking at this and learning better, more, better, whatever.
English, yes. Okay, let's crack on.
Wait. I got to answer this. I'm confused. Can you record a video about that? Yes, we're gonna. It's on my list. It's on my short list for my videos, and I posted my link to my channel earlier in the show.
I plan on once I learn all of this stuff, I want to put it together, and I will either create my own video stuff on my own YouTube, which has nothing, or it will be on the next Flutterista conference, which I can't give any details because we don't have details yet, but we'll know more soon.
You're always welcome, Steph, to post on the Flutter Community YouTube channel. So.
Yes, I know.
Right.
I put my last big
I
video.
also have the Flutterista. I may put mine on Flutteristas just so we can drive more to. I know we'll get into the whole Flutterista versus.
All right, I'm posting a link about this question a little bit, because my the question in Code with Carlos is: do you think that Flutter jobs and positions are going to keep on growing? And my answer is I hope so. I think so, but I've been part of some conversations in the last week or so. With Matt Carroll, being Matt, you all know I'm a huge Matt disciple, but he definitely has opinions, and
Matt Carroll?
Matt
Carroll?
Yeah, Matt Carroll, yeah.
Oh yeah, he has no opinions at all.
Yeah, no, lots of opinions, and he's great because
Love you, Matt.
Yeah, he knows why he believes what he does, so you can have good conversations with him.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. People that just repeat stuff they've heard, Simon say, for example, well, if I want to talk to Simon, I'll talk to Simon,
Don't bring me into this.
No, you know why your opinions are yours. So we can have good conversations with you about anything.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, people that haven't dug in and understood the whys of things,
understood the problem space. Yeah,
exactly. Then all they can do is repeat what they've heard.
Fully informed.
Yeah, and I just mentioned Simon as an expert here. That was all.
Yes.
He knows more about Flutter, I think, than anybody I know. So
he's the Flutter whisperer.
Probably.
There you go, Nash. Got it in there.
But I posted a blog entry that he had in there that is specifically talking about why we need to maybe think about going after more people and stuff like that, because I think we're seeing some competition from the different composable UIs that are out there, and even I've been even hearing some people that are somewhat respectable, if not a little bit curmudgeons, talking about maybe it's time that we move on past Flutter and start looking at some other things. And so these are people that have historically been friends of Flutter. And so I think that we need to make sure that we keep looking at what we're doing to make sure that it stays being the solution, the go-to solution for these multi-platform things, for things like that. And so we may need to look at ourselves, making sure that we keep it in the public light and things like that to and start really proselytizing to make sure it keeps growing, so we do keep growing the jobs and stuff.
For sure. Okay, all right. I don't know if there's any, I think you said it all there. I mean, I think we're all in a place that we all believe is going to keep growing, and the I think what really I've seen is that I've seen a lot. I mean, I keep hearing about people saying there's no companies. Loads of companies are doing this. I keep seeing them all the time. I think the problem here is that I think there's always been the problem with Flutter, and I think it will. The two curves will join at some point, which is the interest in Flutter from the development market has skyrocketed, but businesses is a bit slower paced, right? So what's happened right now is that the developer market has gone past that curve. But what's going to happen is as the developer curve sort of evens off, and as the curve for developers required by businesses keeps increasing, there's going to be a point where they meet again, and there's harmony, shall we say? But I think at this point in time, there's a lot less. There is less companies than developers, but that's because Flutter's grown so quickly. So the way to actually get yourself a Flutter role, a Flutter job, if you're looking for one, is to really, well, first of all, try hard in terms to get a job, but also set yourself out from the crowd, and then you'll find that that someone is looking for a Flutter developer, you seem a better for that role than alternatives, right? And that's just the way it's always going to be, but even more so at the moment. And I think it's growing, and it will continue to grow.
And point of order here, we've got so many questions that we'll cut completely into our demo time. So I want to stop taking questions in about 5 more minutes, and so we can start shifting these out of the way and move to the live demo. But we're not actually going to stop taking questions. Just please slow down a little bit. We can't keep up. So get your urgent questions in now, so we don't have to cut you off. Okay, that's really the key there.
Right. Let's power through some of these. What's today's agenda? Well, we just said that. Then we can answer more questions than live coding. There you go. Right, moving on. James Foreman, how well does Flutter work in the freelance space? Has a client ever refused you to build the app in Flutter? It's kind of interesting. I'm gonna answer this point specifically from my experience, and that is when we, as a company, first started using Flutter, people were asking for Android apps. We just built them in Flutter. They're asking for an app that works on the Android platform. They're not asking for an app that's written necessarily in Kotlin or Java. They couldn't care what it's written in, right? Really, they just want a working app on that platform, and that I think is the interesting point here. Especially when it comes to the freelance space, the client doesn't care. They want the fastest app in their hands as quickly as possible for the cheapest price. That's kind of always the way in that freelance space. So I don't think I've never seen anyone refuse for you to build a certain thing. And to be honest, if you want to concentrate with Flutter and do that, and then the client says no, I don't want it. I want it done in Android, then or in Kotlin or whatever. Then say thanks very much. I don't want your work. I'm going to go into my next project that does want me to use this. Or the other one is sell them on it and explain the pros and cons, so you can build it quicker with Flutter, right? Like these are all things, it's it just makes sense, put it that way. But we're going to advocate that here, of course. Any thoughts from Randall, from yourself, or Steph?
No, I'm trying really hard at my day job. Now, granted, what I do is SQL stuff, but we do have gigs and things like that we can do. but my company still hasn't done. There was one at one point, but especially large corporations, because they've got time, they've taken and they have the investment, but it's my leadership is encouraging me to do my Flutter stuff. And so I've actually got an idea about something that I might say, hey, how about I build this for us? And we'll see how it goes.
It's interesting you say that, because what I have been seeing in the developer sort of what's the word? Well, in the use of Flutter overall, is that the big companies, I've seen big companies, there's lots of big companies using Flutter, there's banks, there's all sorts, right? But they move slower. So the bigger the corporation,
exactly, there's definite interest because there have been gigs that we have, but it's definitely slower. And there is not, like, the biggest thing that's great is I learned a couple months ago that the company totally wants people to be contributing to open source stuff. And so the light bulbs started going off in my head. I'm like, okay, cool. This is something. And so when I talked to my manager about it, she was totally on board with that, but it's definitely a slow process.
Yeah, there's that also, that kind of thing that we've seen from the very beginning. In fact, when Flutter was alpha, was that there's certain people that are, let's say they're a senior dev or a technical lead in some one product inside a big company, right, that are doing software development, and they are the people that are leading the charge in Flutter. They're like, no, we should use Flutter. Can we try Flutter on our next project? And then normally in that situation, what we were seeing that would be, and what I've heard from people is that they would do an example. They'd say, look, I built this whole section of our app. I just did this on its own as a test example, and I did that in 16 hours in my spare time, and it took me a week. Right? Look how fast we could build this, or how better and we can build this, whatever, in Flutter, right? And once someone sees that, they're like, actually, hang on a minute, that's kind of interesting, right? Over here, this is what I want to do in my company, and then they'll start investing more and start experimenting.
Exactly. Right.
And it's been growing, and it still is growing, but it requires developers to make that effort, right? Like, and frankly, if you're interested in Flutter, you'd be doing that anyway. So.
Hey, just a couple of real quick things on that. One of which is, those of us that were around in the 90s and stuff, it was at least a decade before a big business was willing to, use Linux or MySQL or something.
Oh,
because
right.
they were open source. So it warms my heart a little bit for you saying that, stuff that Comcast wants you to work on open source stuff, because at least that shows we've made progress in that front.
Oh, it's huge. And I didn't even know that the company had open source stuff out there itself. I was blown away. Mm-hmm. And so it's definitely something that I want to spend more time, and which is part of why I even reported an issue with the Flutter docs. I was scared to death that I did it wrong. It's like, okay, I want to do this. Am I a Simon or a Randall or a Danielle? No.
Yeah.
But I want to be. It's a goal someday.
Well, thank you.
I'm still young.
The other thing I wanted to say is, way back when I first started in Flutter back in 2019, because I'm one of the young ones here too, for that. I wrote, we had a progressive web app that was like an ordering app, and I wrote it in Flutter. Now once again, I didn't figure out the logic, what we made in the API calls, that was all figured out. But I wrote it in less than a month, just using weekends and extra time for it. And then right after that, we had we wanted to try to go to business, and so I wrote a real quick prototype app in Flutter that would run on wherever they wanted to run. This is mobile, but to do what it needed to do. We got the work. And the CEO decided we were going to build native apps, even though I'd already written it and stuff like that. That said, my former company has now published their first Flutter app. So that's a good thing. So I'm happy to see that they've come around on it. But so the answer to the question is kind of, yeah, a little bit. It's out there that people, if they don't understand it, or, they've done a quick search and seen like some of the naysayers saying, oh, well, Google abandons everything or whatever.
Right.
I definitely can see resistance, but I think in most cases, if you show them how much easier it is and fun, how much better it is, how much easier how much cheaper, how much better, overall, how much more expandable if they want to go into other markets of doing stuff. I think you've got a good shot at winning them over.
I think part of the issue is sometimes, and this is a massive overgeneralization, but I'm going to do it. So large companies like mine, you've got the senior leaders who they're focused in this stuff. It's the worker bees that know about environments like Flutter, Dart, do all that we have to push that up. And I happen to have an amazing manager who encourages the out of the box thinking and career development and all of that. There are some people who don't have that. And so if you're out there and you're at a company who is resistant, do like Simon mentioned and Danielle, it's like build something, demonstrate it, talk about it, push it upstream the best you can. And that's how you can do things and be compelling.
For me, there was a personal analogy to the way Perl got started, because as Danielle talked about the 90s,
Perl,
we were, yeah, a little bit. Yes. Just a little. I could recommend a couple good books. Yes. Anyway. And for those that don't know, the joke is that I wrote the top 5 selling books on Perl. So I helped create the interactive web, which created the commercial web. But here was our goal back then. It was to make sure that Perl was understood about its capabilities, to have great training materials, to have a great community back then, which was actually a lot harder because it was only Usenet and Mail back then to really have a community.
Mailing lists. Oh,
mailing lists. Yes. Mailing lists and Usenet. That was the classic stuff back then. But the thing was that really opened up the possibility for Perl programmers to get involved, and unfortunately also crappy Perl programmers to get involved because it was a gold rush. When I was interviewed for being a Google developer expert, one of the key things I kept repeating was, I want to do for Dart and Flutter what I did for Perl, which was be the cheerleader, be the person out there talking about how good this is. And I'm hoping that is the trail I've left for the last 5 years in the Dart and Flutter community, is a lot of things that say, really, you should be using it, and here's the cool ways to use that. So doing advocacy, I think, is a critical part of my job, because I want to have Flutter as a choice for my apps that I write a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, because it works and it works well. And we're just trying to make sure that the infrastructure is in place for people to use it, and people can feel comfortable in choosing it as a reduced business risk forward into Flutter, not that you're increasing the risk by choosing Flutter. There we go.
All right, let's crack on. We got a lot of questions.
We've got more questions. Yes.
Maybe I shouldn't have come.
Oh
no, I'm gonna definitely have to figure out a way that I'm able to come back.
Anyway, wait a second. I would like to know the difference between web app and website and some of Daniel's learnings. I think we actually answered this earlier with Flutter Web, so I don't really want to go over this again.
Yeah, I think we did pretty much.
But briefly, we're saying that web app is something you would log into that does not need SEO, where a website is like a front end of your store. It needs SEO. They're the real differences. SEO, search engine optimization.
Sure.
We'll leave it there.
Well, the only thing I'd say is you could be a classic website, but if it's all behind authentication, you don't need the SEO for it. It would still be a good solution with Flutter.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Which are some popular tools for use of real-time features with Flutter that differ from Firebase? Which are some popular tools to use real-time features with Flutter? So basically, you're saying that you want the real-time features of Firebase, but what are the alternatives? Am I reading that right? That's kind of how I'm reading that, in the sense that, because so it's kind of interesting, because Firebase brought that notion of, they called it the real-time database at the time, but this notion of that you can monitor the database, and when changes happen, the client was immediately notified, and you could display the changes on the screen immediately to the user. And that was something that was revolutionary at the time.
I was going to say, we do have a yes. That is the question.
Yes, brilliant. So it's kind of interesting you say it. So the way that it works is nothing magical. Like this has been around a long time. Like you can connect to a server, it sends you updates as things change, and you disconnect. So GraphQL has a event stream based side protocol that you can use with it. So a lot of GraphQL APIs offer that. There's also Supabase as an alternative to Firebase, which I believe offers it as well. And if you're just generally making your own APIs, and which I've done inside Dart and everything else, you can just use WebSockets. And I also mentioned that HTTP 2 and HTTP 3 offer upgrades on their HTTP sockets to real-time two-way communication channels, which is great. And that really takes the place of WebSockets. It's kind of the same, similar thing. And it also offers push as well over a HTTP channel. There's long polling. There's lots of ways of getting data. I don't know, like popular tools. I mean, I think WebSockets is the one I'd say is the most popular alternative to get those real-time updates down. But Firebase is just a specific implementation of these things. Anyone else wants to add to that? Sorry, I said it all today. Whoops. Right, all right, moving on. How can I limit the width and title? How can I limit the width of a title and expansion tile in Flutter without affecting the content width? I haven't been able to get the title instead of expanding to behave like a flex.
So they want to wrap, I think is what they're saying.
I want to limit the width of an expansion tile without affecting the content width. The problem here is expansion tiles built in a certain way to not really advocate for that. So this is actually was it Danielle? Was it the me and you that first? I think it was. It was me and you that first looked at this similar problem, and that is it's kind of interesting. Let's say you've got a column, and you've got 3 elements in that column. Each one is a string of different text length. Now that text is dynamic. I mean, you don't know where it comes from, but you want all 3 to be like in a box with a background the exact same width or something like that. So what you end up doing is the trick behind this is you make a column, you put your text in, and you wrap the entire thing in intrinsic width, and that says be your natural width size, and then you set the column cross axis to stretch. So basically, this is two opposing constraints. So the constraint comes down to be as big as you need to be intrinsically, and once that's set, the column goes, okay, which is the biggest one? Stretch them all out to be the same. And that can also happen on rows. So what you're asking for expansion tile is a row where you're saying you want the intrinsic width of whatever the content is, and you want the title to be the same width. So you can actually do that, but you wouldn't be using expansion tile. Does expansion tile actually let you set any widget for its child? I don't know.
And by the way, while you're looking that up, Simon, I've used that as recently as 2 weeks ago.
Intrinsic width, intrinsic height are definitely underutilized by a lot of different layouts that people are trying to build. It's something that I think people should try to understand.
They get maligned in the documentation because it talks about how they're expensive, because they are relative. It gets maligned in the documentation because it talks about how they're expensive, and they are expensive, but in most cases, who the heck cares? Because they're not that expensive.
Well, if
there's cases where they are,
it really does bug me when you see that. Like there's some ways that if you want a layout to behave, you're asking for it to do the extra layout pass of intrinsic, because that's what you want from your layout, right? I see too many people do this thing where they go, okay, I need these things to be this like a third of their parent or something like that. So what they do is they go and wrap it in a layout builder, get the constrained max width, divide it, multiply it by a third, whatever, and then use that width and fix the width. And that's not the way to do that, because what you've now done, or ideally not the way to do it, should I say, and that is you've now moved layout into the widget hierarchy, where the widget hierarchy is your configuration structure almost, and then layout is a separate thing that happens, and then painting is a separate thing that happens. So ideally you don't want to mix those two things up, and that's where custom single child layout, custom multi-child layout, these things, custom render objects, that's where they come important. That's where you move your layout back to where it should be in the layout pass. Go on, Brenda.
If you need something very complex done, the universal widget, the universal screwdriver of layout is Boxy, Boxy. That's in the pub. It is amazing. It basically can do any layout you can write code for, which is a lot of stuff. So yeah, you should check that out. It's done by one of the Pixel Toast is actually one of the server administrators for the Discord, and he's very cool. He does some really cool stuff. He also did Puro, if you're familiar with Puro. Also a really good tool we recommend frequently.
And the title is a widget, by the way.
Sorry, it is a widget. I mean,
Yes.
you could do something like just wrap it in intrinsic with your text. You can also wrap your I don't know. I need to go look and see what it's doing inside. But to be honest, expansion tile is not a difficult thing to build yourself.
Right. And in fact, actually, there's one part of expansion tile I hate, which is the fact that you can't you can't programmatically change it. So you can't have keyboard interactions with it. You can't have things that you'd want to have for other reasons. You can't do. So I'm not a huge fan of expansion tile to begin with.
I believe they added that actually.
Oh, did they really?
I think expansion tile state is open, so you key it, and then you can use the keyed state to control it.
Very nice. See, I'm glad I speak up sometimes.
Seem to remember that's a thing, but it's been a while since I've even used expansion tile.
There's a controller. There's a controller now. Yeah. So
is there a controller now?
There's a controller. Yeah. Yeah. So I take it back.
Expand collapse. There's a controller now. Yeah.
So I take it back. I don't hate it anymore.
But honestly,
if the title is a widget and you really just want to.
Oh, say again.
I don't know if I'm like fading it out on us, but if title is a widget and all you want to do is change the title, if title is a widget and all you want to do is change title, then you could constrain that however you wanted to. If that's the only widget you're wanting to constrain, you want everything else to be whatever it would be. It's a widget.
You could also limit the width of the title in expansion title in Flutter without affecting the content width. And it might be good to just clarify what you're asking for there, maybe a different way, just to be clear that what we're trying to suggest is the appropriate way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What it looked to me like is like if you. Okay, never mind. Go.
No, I was gonna say let's crack on because we'll be here forever debating this. I'll get through some questions. Right. Roberto says Firestore gets summary of data up to 20k of entries in a list. Causes the UI to jank with data is being fetched and loaded. Is it time to use an isolate or is this something else? Interesting. I would say that it's not like, again, I get summary of data up to 20k entries in a list. I mean, it's not really. Thank you for including the information, the detailed information. UI jank is caused when one piece of processing that you're doing takes longer than one frame of graphics is to render, which means, for example, if you're trying to get 60 FPS, you have 60 milliseconds per frame. Now, if you've got one function that you're running, one bit of code that takes longer than 60 milliseconds to run without a break, then it will run over that limit and you'll skip that frame and you'll miss a frame when you're scrolling. And that's what gives you the UI jank. So the generalized approach here is do your work in chunks and do your work in smaller chunks. And you don't have to use an isolate to do that. What you can do is just split up your thing. So you're reading 100 at a time and paging it, right? Meaning that each time you're reading and processing it, it's happening in a few milliseconds, and you're reading another 100 the next frame, 100 more the next frame, because not normally do you need to have 20k entries up front. And in fact, I feel like that's probably a bug in the way you're accessing your data, because there's no way an app should download that much data for a summary, right? Like it may be trying to build a summary from 20k list of entries, but then really that's wrong, because that means that every time your app renders that screen, you get 20k read requests to your database in Firestore. I can tell you right now, that's going to add up hugely on costs. That is definitely not what you want to be doing. What you want to be doing is using cloud functions set up a scheduled cloud function that runs, say, once an hour, right? That reads those entries or reads the entries from the past hour and adjusts some totals that give you your summary. So you're adjusting your numbers as new data becomes available. And that way, the app only fetches the one record of the summary from your database, which gives it all that information ahead of time. So it's not the user that actually builds that all those entries. It's done as something that's done by the back end or something that's done on the fly. Progressively on the back end, because doing that on your app is not the way to do this, right? Like that, especially, I don't even know how much data there is. Let's say each record is 1K. That's suddenly, that's 20K of data you're downloading on every time you go to that screen or something. It's not a viable. I don't think it's viable.
Well, in using cloud functions, you could actually get it to automatically keep that list up to date, so it's not even delayed by an hour. You could actually, it's a little more advanced programming, but you could have that same strategy that Simon just described. You could actually have it just anytime something, watch for a change. When it changes, you update the summary, and in which case it's always updated.
On the document update from Firestore, you just that's it. You adjust your totals, you adjust your summary, or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and away you go. Yeah.
And that'd be kinder on your pocketbook, kinder on the battery for the app. It'd be kinder everywhere.
There's a really great series. Let's see if I can find it whilst we're talking here. But there's a really great Firebase playlist on. Hang on, I think I just found it by luck. Is this the one? I don't know. Let's find out. Getting documents, saving documents. I think this is not the one. Oh no. Spoke too soon. Now I can't find anything but that one. So there was a playlist on YouTube, which I cannot find right now, about Firestore, and hang on a minute. I found it. That's good. So I'll bring this up on stream here briefly. I don't want to get a copyright striked or whatever. But get to know Cloud Firestore. This actually talks about briefly about how do the queries work, what is NoSQL, how to access arrays, structures, all sorts of other fun things. This, I'd say, is your reading material that you need to go look at. I put a link in the chat, and that gives you the material you need to do to understand a NoSQL database and how you actually access this data. It's not the same as your client is accessing the database directly. It's definitely not the same as how you might treat a relational database, as Steph will attest to.
Well, and he's also good. That's a good series. He's also good that if something radically changes, he'll edit it with a future self coming back into.
I loved it. First time I saw that. He came back and edited it, and it's his future self.
Yeah.
I haven't finished the series, but I did. Even as a relational database coder for 25 years, going and watching it, it was actually very informative.
Yeah, I'll ask you all this, not the panel, but the people in the audience. I've thought very seriously about just starting up a series and learning Firebase and going along as someone that's been programming Flutter for quite a while, someone that's been programming SQL databases for over a decade, someone's been doing all that kind of stuff, and coming in and so I'm thinking about doing a series on that. So if you all would like to see it, let me know in the comments.
I vote yes. I know I'm not up here. I'll go write it since I'm not yet.
I thought we had a question coming from elsewhere, but it looks like we're gonna have to skip that one. All right, we'll move on to the next one. What do you think about the current job market? Believe me, someone claims can't get interviewed with two FANG experiences even. What juniors should do, it's really disappointing. Someone claims can't get interviewed with two FANG. I mean, the thing is so FANG is a generalized term for like the big software corporates. So Firebase, what was I saying? Not Firebase. It was Facebook. Oh my goodness, geez, Google, whatever. Anyway, I mean, there's just So first of all, there was a bunch of layoffs in the market in general. In these big companies, they're not looking to hire, as far as I'm aware. Like right now, like they've already cut their belts, so they cut their belts, they're not wanting to hire more people. But the market will creep back up again. But there's loads of business and startups. I don't think there's.
Can I
I don't
add
know.
something?
Go for it. Yeah.
So as a junior Flutter developer, I can speak to something that you definitely need to make sure that you know is test coverage. Like you cannot get on at Very Good Ventures unless you know test coverage. You have to be able to write tests, and it has to be fully done. So make sure you learn that, because that's also something that could set you apart from somebody else who has more Flutter experience if they haven't worked on the test side. So learn that.
You mean like the 90% of the people that don't seem to put tests
Yeah,
in?
that's one thing that
Set
I
yourself
don't.
up from there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wish when I took the App Brewery course that had been included, just because I would have learned it from the beginning. And I did update an article last fall, and I have to go and re-update it because it's, but just touching on it and learning as I was doing that. So it's something that I also want to include in a series whenever I can learn everything I need to know about migrating my app to Flame.
Does Flutter Apprentice talk about testing?
Not in edition 3, but I have said for edition 4, which we're kicking off, I want it included. Testing is a large subject, and since Flutter Apprentice is already huge, but it is something that I have asked as the tech editor that I want to see it included.
Good.
I can't speak to what all we're doing because we're still at the beginning, but we are kicking off. I'm expecting a meeting soon. We've started. The authors are working. Let's put it that way. Tech editor, as I have not received anything for me to edit yet.
I guess I don't think there's any more to add.
Oh yeah, Andrea's courses. Richard just posted a comment.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, what's it? Code with Andrea? Is it this website?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, Code with Andrea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that was like my whole vacation. Things got messed up with the timing of it, so I'm hoping that Pup will stay like this, so then I can do my migrations. I have apps that are going to get pulled from the store, so I have to make some updates.
All right, let's carry on here. Q1 I did mobile dev in Flutter, and it's kind of straightforward. But now I have to expand existing app of Flutter Web. How to do UI parts since the rest of the app will remain the same almost. Okay, this is like.
Okay, can I say something on that?
Sure.
I mean, then I'll let you experts. So my Flutter app, when I just went and added the website, I didn't have to change anything. So it depends on how your app is.
That's not what they're saying. That's not what they're saying.
I don't think it's.
I don't know what Danielle, what you think in a second, but when I read this, just read it again, I'm seeing like how do you do UI on web? Like, what is the difference between that and mobile? And specifically, like, you do approach it the same way in terms of like layout and everything else with Flutter, but there's a difference in the way that you would do it, like in terms of there's standard web stuff that you would think of, like breakpoints, the fact that it can actively resize. So think of it like a desktop product. On a web or mobile, you're dealing with a very particular that your app stays the same size for its entire lifetime, more or less. When it comes to web, the user may resize that the size of your read screen real estate at any point. So that's something that's really kind of critical to get to understand when you're dealing with Flutter Web. And I'd say The other thing is the input methods that user uses. Like they're not using touch, they're using a mouse and keyboard. So you need to think about focus. You need to think about what it means to hover and use the mouse to hover on things as another part of user input. But again, it's really about like your approach to UI development than it is for like the way that you do it, right? Like the way you do it is still the same. You're still using Flutter widgets. You're still using all that. The big no-no that I keep telling people is be careful of media query. Media query, if you do media query of anywhere in a context, that whole context will rebuild, that whole widget will rebuild whenever the size of your window changes, because part of the media query is the size of your window, especially in web. So what you probably want to build some widgets around that particularly sort of rebuild when the size changes and not rely on media query of.
Well, in that very particular thing, what I do is I have an enum set up with breakpoints, and I actually have usually somewhere tied with either as part of an enhanced enum or as just something I can get from like a map I can use that enum with, is where I get my directions for laying it out. Like, is it a row or is it a column? Is it, am I using which size font am I using? Those kinds of things I get from that. But what I do is at a fairly high level, I have I have a layout builder. And that layout builder takes the constraints, picks which breakpoint it is. And so now I'm only rebuilding I'm only rebuilding the tree if that breakpoint changes. Because otherwise the breakpoint stays the same, then everything's the same. I mean, it's going to rebuild whatever it's going to do for size. I take it back. It's still going to do it for sizing, but I'm not going through, a lot of other things with it,
There's actually a slight way of better. I think we did this on a previous show. There's actually a slightly better way of approaching those things in the layout builder.
Okay.
I feel like I did some code before, and I'm just going to see if I can find it.
Last time I brought this up.
I think it's probably on the show before.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I can't even find it right now, so I'm not going to bother. But generally speaking, again, it's that kind of thing where this kind of you can actually what's it called, widgets binding observer, is it? Widgets.
Yeah, we talked about that. You're right. We definitely talked about that.
Yeah. So there's a class built into Flutter. I won't go on about it again, but I will just get you the link to the class I'm talking about. I can't even find it now. Observer. What's it called? Because widgets. Is it widgets observer? Widget. Oh, I've lost it.
Yeah. It sounded like widgets binding observer. It sounded right.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mistyped it. Sorry.
Okay.
It's widgets binding observer.
Yeah.
And if it ever loads.
Yeah, we talked about that. I definitely need to explore that.
And this allows you to basically register your interest. And this does not rebuild your widget. What this does is it registers your interest to this observer class. And what you're going to do is one of these methods is going to get called. So like your app lifecycle, the locale, the metrics, which is, for example, if your phone is rotated or the window size changes, platform brightness, text scale, you name it, these like routes changing. This allows you to monitor your app, sort of various things in your app. And if, for example, it did change metrics, once you get this did change metrics, there's actually an example here. Look, last size, you can compare it to your last size, and in this case, instead of doing set state, you say, oh, only if the size changes, then check the breakpoint. If the breakpoint has changed between one or the other, then rebuild my widget with the new enum of my breakpoint. And this way, you're only ever rebuilding once it hits a certain breakpoint and the screen needs to change. Otherwise, you're not rebuilding on every frame of every pixel change of every drag operation. It's only changing when you hit a breakpoint, the breakpoint changes. When a layout builder will always rebuild its children on every layout change, which is why it's considered expensive, right?
Okay. Well,
there's a nice, just briefly, just on this topic quickly, there's a nice, most people forget this, which is there's media query data, which is the object that holds the media query stuff itself, and it has some constructors, if I can find it. So the one that was previously used all the time is from window, and this you would give it your Flutter window, and then it would build the media query data from that. So you still can use media query, but you're not using the inherited widget. And the new one is called from view, and this it explains it in here and how you use it. But basically, a media query from view is how you deal with will be multi-window support in the future. So start migrating to this now. But then what this does is this gives you all these things like device pixel density, the view insets, all these kind of fun things that you'd normally use, but directly from the view. And then you can choose to get that whenever you want without registering an inherited widget. So,
That's pretty awesome. Thank you. All right, now back to what I think he's actually asking.
yeah, sorry.
So he's done mobile development in Flutter. That's great, not a problem. Right now, I think what he's got is he's got a web app that he's got to extend with Flutter. And so I think this goes back to, I could be wrong, but I think he's talking about actually, you know, where you do part of the app in Flutter and part of it, you know, native, in this case, web. That's what I thought he was doing, since the rest of the app will remain the same almost. That's what I'm hearing from that, is the fact that that's probably not Flutter. He's wanting to do it with Flutter. He says on, but I think he means with. I could be wrong.
I see what you're saying. I think let's get some clarification on that. Let's move on.
That is a valid interpretation, yeah, but I actually saw it the way Simon was explaining it, whether he's just taking in a gap and putting it on the web. But yeah,
he's followed up here. I'm struggling with signing apps on it. Because this is a slightly different question, but I'm struggling with signing apps on Android and iOS. Do you have some recommended tutorial work on these things? Everything's so confusing. I'm afraid signing is just confusing. To be honest, there's some great stuff on the flutter.dev website under the deploy section. I checked that out. But generally speaking, you just need to go to each. There's a lot of historical stuff that goes into signing and deploying on the app stores, and none of it is great material, and it's all massive pain. To be honest, I've never found any good resources, but I honestly haven't gone looking terribly hard.
Have you done your writing exercise? If you had done your reading for your exercise, you would be able to answer that question. I can't say what it is, but you can.
Did Steph just get herself uninvited from future shows?
No. There is what Steph was just saying in Flutter Apprentice. There's a section for deployment, and so over here under deployment, there's building and releasing your Android app, which goes into signing your app in here, how you get your key store, and so on and so forth. And then on iOS as well, there's a whole bunch in there as well. I won't go through it now, but I'll pop that link in the chat for anyone that wants to go hunting around in the documentation. Frankly, it's the concept of signing your app is about originally it was about the fact that when your app is on someone's phone, they can be assumed that it's yours and it's signed, so it can be known that it's not been modified in any way and when it's been shipped. But now a lot of it's just been used as a way of protecting your app in transit to the app store. So it's what you call an upload key store now for Android, and the same for iOS. The App Store re-signs your application for the device. Both app stores now do this, and this allows them to just ship parts of your app down to the device. So, for example, I'll give you an example here. The best one. Let's say you build an app and you give it 5 different sizes of graphic for different densities of display. And the user's got like you have 1x, 2x, 3x, or 4x time graphic. But the person's using only a 2x screen. So there's no point shipping that person the 1x, 3x, or 4x graphics, because they're never going to use those because they've got 2x screen. They're going to use the 2x graphic size. So what the App Store does is it knows that device has a screen density of 2. So it ships down to that phone just the 2x graphics. And it has to re-sign them so that it proves they were signed by your sort of App Store listing. So this is called bundles on Android, and I can't remember what's called on iOS. iOS does the same thing now. And it means that it doesn't have to ship down the entire app of all of the resources. And this is also slightly part of the confusion with Flutter. And Flutter makes what's called fat APKs. These are APK files that contain all the various variations and possibilities of conditions your app can run under, which makes it like 100 megabytes or something. But the app that actually gets shipped down to the user is like 10 megabytes, 20 megabytes, whatever, right? That is the size that's just needed for their device. So to be clear, yeah, anyway, I'll kind of go off on a tangent there, but whatever. The point here is signing is difficult, and I don't have any good resources. Anyone else want to step in on that one?
So Flutter Apprentice has 3 chapters on deploying your apps. There's one that is creating your icons, the various sizes for both Android and iOS. This is version 3, edition 3. And there's an entire chapter on iOS walking you through everything step by step, and the same for the Google Play Store.
Yeah, I was going to ask Steph where they could find it, but Simon put that up there.
I'll put the link in the chat for you.
And I will say, when I was tech editing those chapters, I was in heaven, because I don't have a ton of apps and I forget what I have to do, and I grab my book and I follow it. It will be updated with edition 4 for changes and things like that. But there are, so chapter 16, right, there's the platform specific app assets. 17 is Android, 18 is iOS. That's that version.
The interesting thing about that the icon stuff is, a lot of people don't know that there's literally, like, if you open up your Android folder from your Flutter project in Android Studio and choose the res folder, it literally has like build icon asset, and you just give it your little like SVG file, and then choose the colors, and it'll just generate all the versions of your graphic for you. And there's also Flutter launcher icons on the pub on pub.dev. And again, that does the same thing. In your pub manifest file, you give it where your image is in your repo or whatever, the icon color and various things, and then it will generate all the versions of your icon for you. So there's but yeah, there's just like getting your Play Store list. I think the best way to like do this is learn by fire and just go make your Play Store listings, go through them step by step. Your App Store listings, and then just do that multiple times. Release some of your own apps, maybe on the side projects, and just kind of get used to it, because it's always complicated. Once it's done, and you're just doing updates. But always the initial App Store listing or every project is a pain.
One thing I'll say about the URL that was shared, if you drop the v.30, it will go to the current edition. So when we update, you'll have that.
Yeah.
But that one's
right.
current now.
How to integrate payment method in Flutter apps.
Well, first question is, who do you want to use?
Yeah.
Stripe,
there is.
is it?
I was going to say there's some official packages for Square and Stripe now, isn't there?
I think so, yeah. And I think on the Stripe one, I think Emily did a boring show. I don't know if it's still current, but Emily did a boring show back when they were still with Google on that. I believe it was integrating with Stripe.
So I'm looking now. There's an unofficial Flutter Stripe 30 days ago, our last update, flutterstripe.io. I don't know about this one. And there's also a Stripe package update 50 days ago. This is meant to be used on the server, so this is what you'd use on the server side, not your app. Stripe payment. I think, just find your provider. Like, there's tons of Flutter Stripe Web, Stripe Checkout.
Yeah.
You name it, you can probably find something.
Right. Square, and what possible. Yeah.
Square payments. I don't know. Square in-app payments. Unverified publisher there. When was this last update? 55 days ago. So these are all still quite recent. I think I'm pretty sure they've got some official packages, but I don't know where. But the end of the day is, there's also you want to be careful when taking payments in your apps. There's nothing to do with Flutter apps specifically. It's to do where your app is deployed to. So the stores have rules and regulations around taking digital payments, and they will want a commission. They own the platform. They own the monopoly. You have to pay them for the privilege. And that commission has been under scrutiny in recent years, because it has been 30% for a long time, which, you're selling a service or a product. 30% is a lot, especially, your profit margin is only like, half the price of whatever you're selling it for, right? So,
But now it's like mine is 15 because I don't make 5 million a year.
Well, it's certain certain things you're doing and certain things you're selling, they'll reduce it to the 15. Still you have to pay this for the privilege. So you need to, if you're selling physical goods, actual things, they don't want that much. But yeah, in-app purchases, if you're using digital stuff, you have to use the in-app purchase system or pay. Yeah, so essentially pay the commission on the digital sales. So you want to be careful you don't fall into trouble on that. But when it comes to web, you're open to use whatever you want. And when you come to the other app stores, I don't know specific rules, but I'm sure you're probably more open. It's just something around Android and Apple that have been very specific over this. I'm kind of curious to ever see some numbers about how much Apple's profit margin comes from that commission. I suspect it's quite a considerable amount. Anyone else wants to add to that?
I don't know where my I got a postcard because of the lawsuits from both sides, but the money I got from my lawsuit was 16 cents. Yes, it cost them more to mail me the postcard. That was the Apple side. I haven't received my Google side, but I did cash the check because it's like, okay,
yeah,
they paid it. I'm gonna, and it was so weird.
It's not just that.
For 16 cents.
It's not the value. It's the fact that it took place, right? Because it has to set a precedent. It has to make sure that they're held accountable, right? Okay, class action lawsuit, 1 million people, everyone got a cut of like 16 cents. Sure, it's like not
cash your checks. Cash your checks.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is, for them to see it, then they see they're getting hurt in the pocket, and to not do these horrible tactics, because it is very much. I liken those fees that the app stores had, and for a very long time to the what was going on in New York in the 30s, like the mobs and stuff, like running the city and all that kind of stuff. It feels very much monopolies and like
still happening.
Kind of all right, well, it's still happening, whatever. But that kind of Sure, but I'm kind of visualizing it to that, right? In terms of that you want to take money, you have to use our platform. You can only distribute your apps through our platform, through our stuff. So therefore, we're going to charge you however much we want to charge you for that service. You know, and it's like a total monopoly over the marketplace, right?
And say, as a developer, I'm totally fine with that. I pay my part. Now, I loved going down to 15% because 30% is ridiculous, but because I'm such a small business.
Most people don't realize though that even like getting a developer account on these platforms, so to just sign an app for the Apple App Store, you have to pay I
pay $99 a year. Where on Google Play, I paid one time. I will.
Yeah.
That's
another interesting thing that I thought was kind of interesting, that they take this ongoing commission from all this stuff. They still charge the developers to get onto the platform.
Yeah.
And it's not like for Android, for Google, it feels like a token value, right? Just to prove that who you say you are.
It was $25.
Right. But to charge like $100 every year for the privilege of having your apps in the store. I mean, just
if you then give a percentage to.
If they rebated that on a percentage or something, I'd feel a lot better.
Yes.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. So there's a cost.
We could.
As long as we get that
we could keep arguing this for a lot longer,
okay.
But we have 13 questions and 20 minutes left before the top of the hour. So let's power through.
Danielle, do you have a meeting you're supposed to be at?
I'll leave soon. But I want to be on this question.
Okay.
I want to hear the answer.
Let's see, Rand. AFIK, there is no way to catch the backspace key. If an empty text field is focused, backspace is an OOP. We use the empty character hack. Yeah, I came up with that hack actually a long time ago in Flutter for this. With Flutter 3.10, this does not work on web. Sad face. Interesting. Was this just us to rant about this issue? I didn't know until just now.
How do I do it?
Yeah, I didn't know it work on web. I use the Unicode 2000B replacement character for a very long. I think it's the replacement character. The zero, is that the zero width? Yeah, that's the zero width space, right? So basically, it takes no room on the screen, but there's a character there. And when you hit backspace, it deletes it, and then you can detect if the length of your string is 0, and therefore they press backspace on an empty string, and then you can take them back. This has long time been same problem on Android and iOS. It's because the keyboard is a separate. The software keyboard that pops up on the screen is actually a completely separate application to the application running. I don't know if you get. You can build your own keyboard apps. For those that don't know, this is how they work. You want to have a real solution to work around and really be implemented. Yeah. So the real problem here is actually one of not using the software keyboard input. What you want to use is the hardware keyboard. So if you go look, there's a top level class in Flutter called hardware keyboard.instance. And it allows you to capture the keys yourself. So instead of like having input through the system, you can actually capture the keyboard keys. But it means that you can't use the software keyboard. That's the pop-up keyboard for input, because the way they work, software keyboards work, is they work on a composable area. That's the area that you're editing at the time. And that has a length to it. I don't know why that wouldn't work on web, but on web, what's really nice about web is that you have access to the hardware keyboard. So a lot of time on web, then it's not like a software keyboard; it's actually like a physical keyboard, and you can get the hardware keyboard keys. So yeah, there's a top level class called hardware keyboard, and you can get the keyboard presses and know when backspace is pressed. That's the way to deal with it. But again, it doesn't. Let's be clear, it only works with physical keyboard, right?
I think it's. I need to turn into a pumpkin. Get back to the day job.
Okay. Well, thanks for dropping by.
Thanks as always for having me.
Did you want to add anything to that question? Sorry if
I really didn't. No, I wanted to hear what the answer was. I mean, anything I would do would still be a hack, and I definitely said I don't want a hack. I want a solution. So
sadly, it's a limitation of the host platform. It's not a limitation of Flutter. Android apps have the same problem. But what you can do is you can actually get the keyboard events of non-on-screen keyboards with this hardware keyboard top level class, hardware keyboard.instance, and then you can actually detect the raw keyboard down, was you get a key event callback, and then when you get these key events, you have a key down event, key repeat, key up event, and you can see if a certain key is pressed, like backspace, and there's what's called the logical keyboard key. And if you look at the logical keyboard keys, you'll find a huge long list. If I can grab it, of all of them, and somewhere in here is backspace. There it is. Represents the logical backspace key on the keyboard, and this allows you to detect when the backspace is actually pressed on a keyboard. That will work in web, when on desktop, for example, when you have or laptop when you have a physical keyboard. It, however, no, will not work with a software keyboard. You are limited to whatever hacks you have for that. Right, I'll shut up.
bye.
Thank you, Danielle, for joining us. Awesome. Let's crack on with the next question. Power through. My Flutter web app load time is slowed by including all possible icons and fonts, even though there are only 5 to 10 were configured. Even though there are 5 to 10 configured in Firestore, each user can configure. How am I optimize that? So you can dynamically load data, including fonts. So that's your answer. Basically, in short, don't include it as part of your assets for your app. If they include it as assets, they're shipped as part of your app. If you just stick them on like a cloud storage, make a bucket on cloud storage. If you're using Firestore, you already have one. It comes with your Firebase app. Put the files there, and then they have your app download those files, the ones they chose in their configuration Firestore, remotely from the URL. You cache them, you download them, you save them in your app, and then you can load them at runtime. With I think it's called Font Manager. I can't remember now. You can load fonts. Load font. Yep, load font method. Font loader. There you go. That's the one. Font. So there's font loader, which is a top level. I think it's a top level class. But font loader, give it a name, and you can say, add font, load font. I think you can get the font loader from the assets, from the services that are built in. I think it's the asset bundle font loader. I forget. You can go look for it. But basically, yeah, you can just load the bytes that you downloaded, and they get then this adds the font family that you specified to your font selection list for text style to use. Yeah, that's how you do that. Therefore, you're only downloading the ones that they use. All right. I kind of find it funny because, like, sorry, this isn't on talking about you, Billy, but I find this interesting. I think there's like, maybe this is about concepts, like knowing about how to download stuff and how you might do things, like versus like just using pre-built packages. Why isn't it just a download button, like, you know, a download like method that I could just call it a library? Why do I have to build it myself? It's like, well, that's how every program, that's your job, to program, right? To build it, right? So I do feel like there's a, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's definitely a group.
Well, Simon, you also will find a package and then tweak it and then create your own package. So not everyone is the Flutter whisperer, and they need to know how to do some of these other things.
It's not, no, what I mean is, I think there's an expectation that it should be, I see like qualms about them not having a function or a feature available to them.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I
agree. Is different from like if it doesn't have it, that's fine. Do it yourself. Is what I'm saying. Like, that's the answer to that. Not just moan about the not.
Or create a package. I would love to know how to create packages, so then I can do, and I'm sure there's documentation out there, but we'll go back down that rabbit hole. But you know, it's the kind of thing that if people know how to do that, and then that's also contributing to the community, then fill that hole.
Yes.
Anyway, okay.
All right, moving on before we rant even more. Without late, how do you account for values that need to be set in the class constructor that should not be null? That's the point. So that's why late's there, right? So we're not saying you shouldn't use late. So this goes back to an earlier conversation. We weren't saying you shouldn't use late, but there's reasons for when to use late. If it's not, if the value's not there when you initialize a class, then you either it has to be nullable or it has to be late. It's one of those two, because you're not saying it with an initial value. However, what you can do, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying, is you initialize it with an empty value, with a default value that is not null. That is, so it's always got an initialized value. And then
so you're saying something like a blank, like if it's or a -1 if it's an integer or something like that.
Exactly.
And if you don't have a natural one, of that, look at using FP Dart and using option, because an option none will be the universal, I don't have anything for this slot yet. And then your option of some of that value will be able to.
One of the big qualms I have with null safety, I still have with it at the moment, is that there's no detection of late. So there's no keyword to say, has this thing been initialized? So one of the things that we would do with null, and in fact, I'm sure Nick, the guy who was conveying this null stuff earlier, probably has used this, which is you might have like a singleton that you're using. So you look at the current private instance variable. Is it null? Okay, I have to initialize my singleton, and then I can return my instance. And that way you don't initialize every single time the getter is for instance is called. You only initialize it the first time. That's a valid use of null, right? That's quite a standard use case. So you make it late to switch out of the null safety stuff. But now you're like, well, I can't detect if it's not been set yet and only set it the first time. So that's why I said earlier about having late final instance equals and then your factory constructor or whatever it is. So the first time you call the instance, it constructs it and sets it, and it doesn't call it again. And that's kind of like the switch up of those two behaviors. Sorry, to answer the question here, the point here is to initialize it with a value instead of initializing with late. So if it's a string, blank string, if it's an int 0, whatever your natural, what we said here, the natural value is for whatever it is, and then you update the value later on with whatever it should be. And this avoids you having that null situation where you might reference a variable or its content and it's not there yet. Right. Oh, this leads on to this question. Sam talks about creating an empty factory constructor and using it all the time and checking against network values. Problems with lat long is what is an empty lat long is a real place. So that's why you add a Boolean value to your lat long class called set or valid. No, you could set one out of range.
FP Dart option. FP Dart option. wrap your value
I mean,
in a
it's the
monad.
same-
Okay, I'm writing this down. You've said it twice now. FP option. Okay,
No, FP Dart.
FP Dart.
option.
Okay, hold on. And I'll probably be pinging you.
Oh,
So
please.
optional, the functional programming, optional is a term that you can basically say something has a value, it doesn't have a value, and you actually have a flag to detect that. So wrap an object in that. You can make your own little class to do that. It's not a problem. You can use the one that's in FP Dart. It doesn't matter. The point here is you've got a flag that tells you if it's set or not, or if it's valid or not. So whenever you call your lat long constructor, you can have it default to valid equals true. So whenever you create one with any lat long value, it's valid. And then you have a specific empty use case, static const empty equals lat long with 0, 0 as the lat long value, but then valid equals false. And now whenever you try to use that lat long, you can say is valid and see if the lat long value is actually set or not. You can also, again, it doesn't, if you use a static const empty, you can use the value 0, 0 because you're comparing the object, not its contents. So what I mean by that is, perhaps we can do this in coding in a minute, but if you set up an empty value, then you're comparing what's called an identity match. So the contents of the variable equals lat long dot empty, and because lat long dot empty is a static const, its hash code equals its instantiation equals. Therefore, it's an instant match. There's no need to look at the contents to see if it's empty. The fact that you're using the empty object itself is enough to know that it's empty, and that's like implicitly adding that valid notion, right? The fact if you're using the empty one, it's not valid. If you use it on anything but the empty one, it's valid, and that's implicitly giving you that kind of same logic and behavior as optional. All right, that's enough of that. What should I do for clean code in Flutter app? Write clean code.
Use soap. Use soap.
So, yes. So I mean, you're asking this. We mentioned this before. Andrea did a nice little post around this, like organizing your code, how you can organize your code. And I think as a new Flutter developer, because there's no requirement to structure your folders or your layout or anything a certain specific way, it becomes really confusing about how you should do it. And yeah, like organized by feature, organized by type. There's lots of different approaches to organizing your code. The key here is start a mechanism and be consistent. And if you find that mechanism no longer works, refactor and change your code so you change the way you've organized your code to keep it clean. But again, writing clean code, just write your code cleanly, right? Like add extra line breaks, make sure you got comments. Write clean code.
Comment code, absolutely. I'm all for commenting.
There's actually a lint check. What's that lint check? The Dart lint check. Public APIs and public APIs. I can't remember it. I'm going to find it. Hang on. I'm going to find it. Document public APIs. Is that one? Oh, why are the rules not loading for me when I want them to load? Why? Hang on. See if I can find it. Should we see if I can find it on stream? I think it was doc. Yeah. API doc. Public member API docs. There you go. So if you enable this lint check in your linter rules, it basically says this is an error. You need to, any public method or public class, you'll need to document it with a 3/ documentation. So this is a documentation comment, 3/ not 2. And yeah, and then you'll get all the lovely documentation, and you'll be forced to put it in there because you'll get all these other horrible lint check warnings everywhere.
And you should only do that for packages, not for the end application. The end application doesn't need as much documentation.
I beg to
definitely
differ.
for packages.
Then
we're gonna agree to disagree then.
If you're going to be with it, if there's any chance you could be on a team or someone else is going to be looking at your code, comment your code. Just ignore Randall, comment your code. Period. Just do it. Trust me, do it. Ignore him on that. Just
I
I'll add the comment that turns off the lint for the files I write in then.
So I will mention that the point of doing it for only public members is that reason specifically, right? So the idea here is that anything that's kept private, you don't have to document because it's internal to the class implementation. Whereas when it's public, it's interclass, it's or infra projects. So therefore, you should be documenting it. But yeah, truthfully, you think you don't need to, and then when you realize when you start adding more people, you do need documentation. So it's
or
also
you hire someone who's trying to learn.
Yeah, I'll be really honest with you. What's really helpful is when you come back to your code after 3 years, you go, what the hell did I write here? And you've got some good comments to read.
That's the other thing.
All right, moving on. Dave, how do you integrate a VPN into a mobile app or use an OpenVPN or WireGuard? There's a package for WireGuard OpenVPN. I couldn't understand it.
Continue.
Continued. All right, hang on. Here we go. It talks about public keys and a lot of other things. The whole concept is abstract to me. Please, how would I go about it?
Hire somebody. Hire somebody.
Yeah,
there are people out here that can do it for you.
So it's interesting you talk about this, right? Because the nature so let me explain. Virtual private network is VPN. And generally speaking, the idea here is that you're tunneling traffic. That is, let's say you've got, let's say you're at a college or university and you've got multiple buildings on a campus, and each building has got a local LAN, like a local area network to that building. Let's say they've got routers in each building, but you want to now you might have a connection, a cable between buildings that makes it. Your local at some point it is a LAN still, right? But if these networks are maybe owned by different companies, this becomes what you normally call wide area network, right? I just go through some concepts here just to kind of set the tone. So just bear with me here. These terminologies are just used to sort of like compare different types of connections to each other. But there's a point when you go, okay, I have a West Coast company and I have the same company with a building on the west coast of the US and a building on the east coast of the US, and I need to connect them. There's not one single piece of cable that I can own to connect these two companies and these two buildings, and I cannot ensure that it's not going to be tapped into and is kept secure. You can't make that assumption. When it's inside the building, you own the security, the staff, the contents of the building is something you can control. You cannot do that. Like on a campus, you might be able to do that between buildings. That's called there's even inside the same city, you can kind of get away with this in certain areas. But again, you have to own the cabling between these things is to really own it. Now, a third party owns that. You need to trust that third party is not going to listen to your traffic. That's never going to happen, right? Like you cannot guarantee that, right? So the way you agree to this over the internet is HTTPS, which does SSL encryption. This means that you are trusting that the site or something like right now you're watching us on YouTube. The data from our pictures and everything else is coming to you over an SSL connection on YouTube. No one else can kind of adjust that traffic en route, shall we say? I won't go into too much detail on this point. However, VPN is different. So your ISP knows you're on YouTube right now watching us, right? They know that you went to YouTube, but they don't know what content on YouTube you're watching because SSL protects that. VPN comes in when they can't even know because your traffic enters onto the internet through the VPN supplier. Your ISP knows you're connected to a VPN supplier, but they don't know what your traffic is on that VPN supplier. It tunnels that traffic, and that traffic goes across the internet and comes out on an endpoint on that network. That could be anywhere in the world, depending on what that VPN provider has. And all they're doing is they've made their own little private network on the internet, and it's built out of tunnels, basically. Now, coming back to this point of applications. Applications don't typically talk to VPNs directly. Applications talk to the operating system to communicate to the internet, and that operating system may then have a VPN set up on it. So you can go to your network settings on your phone, configure a VPN, choose like OpenVPN, and put the details in from your VPN provider, and away you go. That means all traffic from your device goes through that VPN provider. Now, there may be a situation when you want your application to go over a VPN. I cannot perceive of such a situation. Not even banks do this, right? Because it would be extremely expensive and it just doesn't quite make as much sense as you think. Like all these VPN adverts you see on online, they don't quite make sense for most people. However, the generalized point here is if you want to, you're just connecting to an API. So coming back to the initial point of this question is how to integrate a VPN to a mobile app. The point here is you use their SDK, their whatever they've got for Android, whatever they've got for iOS, you go for the package path. You said there's packages for OpenVPN and WireGuard on pub. I don't know what, I've never used them, so I couldn't speak to their quality or anything else. But normally what you do is you're connecting to that VPN provider's API. Then all the traffic that you send on a connection goes out through that. The problem you've got with an app level request for this is it's only your traffic in your Flutter app that goes over that secure connection. What won't go there, I'll give you an example. Let's say you use Firebase. All your Firestore data is going through the Firestore client library that connects to Google. That means all your traffic is unsecured not going through the VPN. It's your device that needs to have the VPN settings on it. So the Connectivity Plus package on pub.dev will tell you, is your device connected to a VPN? So you can tell the user they need to set up a VPN on their device. That is the correct way to handle this. If you have full control over your data that you're transmitting and receiving on your application, then you would just use the VPN API for whatever your provider is, OpenVPN, WireGuard, whatever. And then you would get an instance of HTTP client, the class, inside Flutter that connects to the VPN, and it would essentially hide the details of how it uses the VPN from you, and it's just however it works, right? I think that's as much details as I can go on that for now, at least, without going down the rabbit hole. I have not touched the rabbit hole just yet on that one, but generally speaking, it's down to the provider. So I would go look at your whatever the VPN provider is. If they support OpenVPN as a standard, OpenVPN has a standard, then you should be able to use the OpenVPN package. But yeah, apps don't normally connect to VPNs directly. Like you could ask someone to enter VPN information, they would have to go get an account, but you don't particularly want to have your account and private keys shipped inside your app for a VPN provider. I can't imagine a scenario where you would want to do that. That sounds very bad to me. So I would literally just go as far as using the Connectivity Plus package to detect if they're on a VPN. If they're not, stop them from using your app and say you need to be connected to a VPN provider to use my app, if that's what you're trying to do, and then provide them a link to a website where they can go be told how to set up a VPN on their phone. Yeah. Anyway, right, shut up now. All right, next question. And I'm going to get to the end of this, otherwise. We're getting to the end. We're getting a few more questions. I did mobile development in Flutter, and it's kind of straightforward. I think we spoke about this, didn't we? Expansion of existing Flutter.
Did.
Yeah, it did. Let's see. Don't post it twice. Yeah, and that one was twice. 2 of 2. I missed part 1 of 1. Sorry, Michael, but we're going to get... Let me see if I can find part 1 of 1 here somewhere.
Didn't come through. I think he had a URL in it.
Oh, yeah. If you have a URL, they get blocked by YouTube as spam, so we're not going to see that. Hopefully, we're going to get you the best part of this. So router.go doesn't work, but router.push does, but Chrome back button doesn't go from product 2 to product 1. Perhaps you can expand upon your point, and we'll follow this up. It sounds to me like you're trying to use Go router, and Go updates the current stack completely. Push adds to the stack. There's a very difference in the behavior. The back button will only work if you're using push, right? I think, if I remember rightly. So hopefully that helps. That's the best I can get from this question. Maybe some more context. If you want to provide some context, Michael, we'll try not to. Right, let's
provide some context that doesn't have URLs in it. I think
Yes,
that's probably the key. Be careful about putting URLs in. We can do it, but you can't.
My app uses Google Maps and updates some overlays line where the user walked every time the user changes position. Okay, is Google Maps widget rebuilt every time? If so, is it bad practice? It is, but it actually keeps the same instance of Google Maps underneath, and it's a very efficient way of doing it. I wouldn't be concerned by that tool. Again, early optimization is the root of all evil, as we say. So don't go trying to optimize something until the maps feels laggy or horrible to you. Then you go, well, how can I optimize this? Then I would go and look into what you're doing. There's tricks you can do with map-based products. So first of all, Google Maps is rendering a native widget to a texture that's outside of Flutter. And Flutter renders that texture inside the app. It copies it essentially, renders inside the app, and then whatever your Flutter UI is rendered on top. Therefore, there's a slight lag in terms of input goes out, it then moves the map updates, and it comes back. That doesn't happen in one frame. So there's a feeling of lag when you move a Google Maps around. It's just the way it's going to work. There are ways to try and get that lag time down to a small amount. But if you want to render like a widget on top and have it move around with the map, you'll find it always kind of lags behind because of the way that works. So in those situations, you're probably best to switch over to using just like Flutter map package and switch away from Google Maps because of the way that renders. I'm hoping, and there has been an open request on the Google issue tracker for Flutter Maps to make a Flutter specific like rendering side of this, where it renders to a texture without the Android native widgets, and therefore would be rendered in line with Flutter to avoid that lag. But so far, we've not. The Google Maps team have not prioritized that piece of work. So that's kind of, I've gone off a bit topic there, but yeah. So my point about the overlays was that it means you can put widgets or draw those dots and stuff on top in a custom paint or with widgets or whatever you want on top, and then you can monitor on-camera move and on-camera idle from Google Map, from the Google Map widget, and adjust the position of those widgets in a stack, for example, when the map changes or moves. Yeah. Anyway, that kind of answers your question and more. I wouldn't be worried about rebuilding unless it becomes a problem. Unless you're like the number of dots. Like, I'll give an example. When they move the map around, wait for on-camera idle. Then for the map controller, you can get the bounds, the lat-long bounds of the view, and then you can check to see how many of those points lay outside the bounds, right? Because what you're essentially doing is you don't want to be sending when you rebuild Google Maps, you don't want to be sending all the points, all the dots for the entire path across the entire globe, right? Whatever. But my point is that when you're zoomed in, you don't want to be sending over all these points that they're never going to see. When they zoom out, then you bring the dots in. So what you can do there is you can actually optimize what you're asking Google Maps to render to the only ones on the view. And that means the amount of data that's transitioning from Flutter across the platform channel to the native code, and then from the native code to the Flutter to the Maps renderer is as minimal as possible. And that's how you fix any lag you're going to have with Google Maps. It's purely the amount of data you're sending. I've seen people send 10,000 markers and go, why is it slow? Well, you're sending 10,000 markers in every rebuild. Of course, it's going to be slow. That's a lot of data that you're trying to send. So the answer to that is don't send that much data. And especially when it's data that you're not going to see on the screen, why are you sending it? So, yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas on how to optimize. Anyone experiment with Dart Flutter on RISC-V, having problems finding economical dev hardware platform to begin with? There's some of it. I'd say DM me on Twitter and we can talk. So I have a whole box of devices right here that are RISC-V devices that I've been playing around with Flutter. There's a whole box of gizmos and gadgets here. I haven't had a chance recently to play around with them. There's a community of us in Flutter doing Risk 5 and wanting to run Flutter and Dart on Risk 5. Maxim Lin from Flutter New Zealand or Australia. He's gonna hate me for not remembering which one it is because I don't remember. Anyway, he's the one that did the Flutter Forward community video on. I recommend if you haven't seen it, checking out, and that's on what do you call it? Mini Flutter or something. Basically running Flutter on a Risk 5 device. He also talks about the device that I have here, Cyped Maxi, I think it is, and that device is able to run Dart code. Flutter is a different beast. It's more about rendering and other things, but certainly that everyone's aiming towards wanting to run Flutter in custom embedded devices. You can already do this with Linux. So first of all, your Risk 5 device has to be running Linux for it to run Flutter, full stop. It's just the requirements on the way that the Dart engine is built. It has limitation of using the Linux system call architecture. I won't go into it right now. Anyway, so Risk 5, your Risk 5 platform that you choose has to run Linux, even if it's a cut down version. It has to be Linux. All right, one more question, and then we're I don't know, see where we are. REB, how to add paragraph spacing in Flutter on a text style. I don't mean line spacing, but paragraph spacing. Use multiple text widgets, and then add your spacing in between. Paragraph spacing is not a non-standard. Paragraph spacing is quite interesting.
Is that what you showed me? Remember when you were helping me with the... You don't ever remember conversations. You're killing me. Yeah. Let me go look it up. You keep rambling. Let me go look it up.
I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about rich text.
Maybe I'll have to go look.
There is, I mean, again, it all depends on how complicated you want to make your layouts, on what your text is that you're trying to render. But you can simply take your text, whatever you're getting, this is coming from a server, and then split it on a double new line. That's your paragraph line break. And then now you've got a list of strings, one for each paragraph, and then simply map or for loop over it or map it, whatever, with a dot map on the iterable into a series of text widgets that are wrapped inside a padding with a bottom spacing set to your paragraph spacing. Now you stick down a column, and now you've got all your text with your paragraph spacing between. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is, I think would end up being more complicated, but you can use text.rich, which is a rich text widget, and it uses text spans. Text spans can have child text spans, and you can also have widget spans. So what you could do theoretically is have a widget span, which is the height, which has a size box as a child with the width set to infinity, double dot infinity, and the height set to your paragraph height. And that essentially does the same thing. You're inserting a widget for the paragraph spacing as you go. It means that you get one text widget rather than many, but you have many paragraph spacings rather than, I don't know, there's not much in it. I wouldn't. The nice thing about doing it at the sort of column approach, as I said before, is that column could be a list view item builder, and therefore you can have really, really long content that reuses the widgets and all that kind of fun stuff like a recycler view. So
I have the code you helped me with.
I think it's text.rich, right, with text spans.
Yeah, it started, the topmost was a single child scroll view, but then down inside the children there's a column inside that, and then there's the text.rich, then text span, and then a widget span was there because I was using a font. I put the heart in there.
So yeah, I mean, there's many ways of doing this. Paragraph space is quite nice because it's a break in the paragraph in wrapping, text wrapping, which means you can just space that however you want. Hope that helps. Right. Did anyone come back with that answer to the second part? Was it Michael came back to us? Did he? Have a quick look. See if I spot anything.
No, but while you're looking, there was a comment or a question that didn't have a Q, I think, but somebody had asked about Codeco and Ray Wenderlich. RayWenderlich.com was rebranded last year to Codeco.com. So that's where Flutter Apprentice is. It's on Codeco.
Is that Codeco? Is that how you say it? I've been saying
Codeco. Codeco.
Tomato. It's one of those.
Tomato.
Yep. Potato. Let's call the whole thing off.
So I'm looking and I'm not seeing any, like.
Stay on target. Star Wars reference.
There we go. Correct. Was that? No, it was also in Aliens, wasn't it?
No.
Maybe it's a common phrase.
Yeah. Creating a Flutter web app. Have you seen issues with Go Router and nav between pages with similar URL, i.e. URL projects one room? No, I've not. I would set yourself aside and do a little sample project, complete separate for you. Flutter create, make a separate sample project, and you're right there. You're right there, Steph.
Yeah, no, sorry. I've got a little one who's like deciding she needs to stand. There we go.
Yeah, I was gonna say create a little sample project with a simple Go router with like your little sample route or whatever, and then see if you can replicate it. If it doesn't happen in the simple one, then you know that it's a problem in your code base and other things in your code is changing that behavior. If it still happens in the simple code base, then raise an issue ticket with that as your sample code and say, look, this doesn't work. This doesn't work as I expect. What's going on here? And then the plugin authors and so on can help. That's the answer to that, really. Right. I'm gonna let you, Randall, answer this last question, and then this is the last question. I'm gonna do that because I
stop. In Riverpod, what should you do if you want to use a notifier that handles events but that doesn't contain any state? Well, the ones that are built by the generator that return either a non-future or a future or a stream, those essentially are providers without state. And if you want to build them by hand, that's the traditional provider, future provider, and stream provider. You can build those by hand still, and it's perfectly okay. And that is one of those, but you can't, it's not really a notifier because you can't call methods on that. A notifier really only needs to be if you have to call mutate methods, but if you don't have a state, you don't really need to do that. If what your goal is to have methods kind of affecting what about the provider, there's not really anything to do there. So that would typically be that you have some derived state that you need to mutate or that you need to call the original one with, in which case just have a downstream provider that's referencing the upstream provider that is the one you're talking about. So I don't know. I need to understand more before I would know why you don't have a state, because typically the point of a provider, a point of a railroad provider, is that it is taking a chunk of app state and giving you an interface both as a consumer of the data to know when it changes and the mutate methods coming in on the side to the notifier to update that state. But if it's not managing state, why is it there? There you go.
Right.
I see the follow-up. Maybe I should answer the follow-up and maybe that'll help. I want to be able to call something like notify listeners. Notify listeners of what, though? The state hasn't changed. That's what's confusing about it. If you're just trying to use it as an event bus, I can see that.
At that point, your state is the event and you should be updating it still. So,
right. There's supposed to be something to say, why did I wake you up? It's important to know, why did I wake you up? And if you have to have some state that represents that, or there's no point in the consumer learning that something changed when nothing changed. Yeah. That's it.
Right.
Move on. All right. Let's
do we want to
spend
coding? Do we spend a little time by coding, because this questions when I'm waiting?
We're already 2.5 hours in, which is
I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Is there anything else for me? Do you have anything else for me? Probably
No,
not. I don't see anything. Okay.
Yeah, we're good. We're caught up.
I will see you later, Simon. I have some other questions, but not for here.
More questions. Anyway,
she'll be knocking on your door anytime now, right? She's flying over to London. She's
Simon.
Thank you for having me.
No worries, Steph.
Thanks, Steph. Come back anytime. Come back anytime. Bye. Yes. And now it's just you and me. I don't know about coding, but we haven't finished this program yet.
Let's see I don't even know where we left this last week. I'm all confused right now. But
I don't remember much either.
So I think
it was something about the sequence of things wasn't happening correctly.
So we started doing this idea of playing a match game.
Right. That clicked twice there. Why did you have to click twice?
So then they matched, and then
there are bugs.
Once it flips back,
I
tap again and it doesn't work. So what's happening there is, let's have a look.
We have a bug.
So when it hides card, we pause the interface. Hang on. It does reverse. But guess what? I think I can see what the problem is. It doesn't reset the flip state. There we go. Flip state equals false. There's that bug fixed. That was stupid.
Really? Yeah. Test it. Let's see.
We start. Right. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. That one and that one. There we go. That was it's funny we come back with fresh eyes, right?
So okay, we're done with coding then. We can wrap the show.
I didn't check if anyone had submitted. I should have a look, but I don't think anyone.
We have a review in queue that I didn't do all the paperwork for yet today. So I promised him we'll do it next week. So we don't have anybody to review today either. Sorry about that. Where's your animation? Put that in.
Okay.
Add some animation.
We need a completion state.
Rockets, things flaring up. Yes.
Yeah. So we need a completion state, and we also need all right. So we want a let's make this.
How will you know if they're all turned over? We have to know how will you know if they're all one matched.
I can definitely do that. So we've got. We know when they've completed, right? So we should be able to slide some room here. Hang on.
See if there's any that aren't completed, and then it's not done yet.
Just about text, and then we're gonna have a reset. So we're gonna need that. So text start over.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Or next game.
Right, next game.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about we could leave. Maybe there's a try it. Okay, yeah. Next game.
Yeah, I think that's most logical. With a question mark.
We had this heading here, so let's. So I want to show the people this because this is something that on the new text on the new button widgets. I say new. This is now a couple year old. But
you're old, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, I know something like that. But yeah, you do style, and then it's text button dot style from, and then you provide your extra stuff in here.
Oh.
Most people don't know that that's how it works. So it's always the name of the class styled from. And then this just applies those style changes that you've requested for and deals with all of the material state for you. Don't just override, don't just create a new text style in here. Is it not text style? Was it button style? Button style. Because then you're going to need to implement all the material state management yourself. And that's rather annoying. So yeah, text button style from, or elevate button in both. It works as well. All right, so now we do this. We should get, there we go, next game. So we have score next game. So we only want next game to appear if the game is finished. So we're going to go back up to our app state. By the way, this is available on a gist. If people want to follow along, I will grab that for you now. And then I will update the gist at the end of this session today. The link is in the chat if you want to follow along. There it is on stream. For those that want to kind of follow along. Right, so we're gonna want to. So first of all, I don't like this way that we're getting double pairs. There's enough choice in our cards here not to ever get double pairs. So I think when we randomly choose an icon, so let's say we say icon var icon data.
You could do it with a shuffle deal of only so many cards.
Well, I would think. Well, what we could do is when we start, there's actually there's various. Okay, so there's various ways that we can do this, right?
Yeah,
so we can,
shuffle.
Yeah, but even a shuffle doesn't guarantee that you're going to get not the same one that you've had before.
Well, no, you have the original full set, then you shuffle that, then you take the first 10, whatever it takes to fill your grid.
Sure.
One way, just telling you, one way. That's it.
I mean,
or you can deal from a set. You could put them all into a set and just take a random element from the set each time.
Well, that's what we're doing right now. And then, we can see if we've already got one that exists. As long as we've got no duplicates in this, that's actually not a bad way. Let's do that. Let's do this. Let's say icons equals icon selection shuffle. So this, we need to duplicate the list first. So list of shuffle, and then we'll give it rand as well.
Dot shuffle, right? Because shuffle doesn't.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Because shuffle's a
side effect. And then what we can do is we get the index here. Index. Ta-da. That sounds like a good idea.
Cool.
Let's start again and see. This one. Oh, no, that was.
Oh, it's different. Okay. Now you got to play the whole game. You need a button that says autoplay. Find them. Just says find them. You could have it change the color of the face down card to the matching pair. There you go. And they're all different.
It's interesting now. There is a bug I just saw, which is kind of interesting as well.
What?
I know. I'm not going to mention it yet. Let's see if we get a final state. So, what's the package? What's that package? The celebration one.
Which one?
Come on.
Which
confetti?
One? Confetti. Yes. Need some confetti. Yeah, they talked about that last week. They said you need to have confetti when you're done.
Yeah, I remember there's a confetti Let's see if I can find it. Here, a live web demo. Let's have a look. Blast stars. There you go. Look.
Ooh. Oh yeah. Oh, that one. The one that comes up from the bottom. That was cool.
I just clicked on everything now and it's performing really well, so that's fine. Hard and infrequent. Yeah, so that kind of like
I'm still amazed you can have that amount of fidelity on JavaScript code running on the web. You can have that many calculations.
Oh, totally.
It still looks good.
So the package is called Confetti.
Okay.
So let's hit stop here and
import it.
Add this to our. This is just like a test project with a bunch of crap in it. So ignore the dependencies.
Yeah.
Let's see if Did that actually work? I wasn't paying attention if that actually ran. We should probably run that again. Oh, there we go. Pumpkin. Okay, so now if I run this, we should have confetti. But let's make it so we have an end game. Yeah. So let's say we have start game, void. Not end game, but I don't know. I mean, like I guess we want a way of detecting. I guess all cards are being. If I to be replace card, yeah. So all cards, so we can have a simple Boolean getter here and say ball is game complete, and that's going to go all cards where every. Right, why are you? Oh, get. Oh, every. Is it every?
All. Isn't it all?
Oh, value. Sorry, it's a voice of value. No, fine. Every. Come on.
All.
There we go. Every.
Oh, it is every.
No, it's not always every. That's what I thought.
Okay.
This validates that if one fails, the test condition returns false early, and there's also the opposite of this, which is any.
Any. That was the other one.
And that is the opposite. So this returns early as soon as one returns true.
Right.
These are very helpful. So we want to say when every one of them is matched, right? So this is card. We want to say card.
Is that true?
Okay, every one of them has to be matched. As soon as the first one is not matched, it returns early. So that way we don't have to loop over every single one of them.
Right. Got it.
Anyway.
Makes sense.
So let's now, I guess when we update our score, it's going to rebuild that part of the UI. But we really want to say if game is complete after we've replaced those cards, then we can do we want a game complete like flag? I guess so, because there's no point like flipping cards or interacting unless the game is complete. This kind of revolves around maybe a game state, maybe having an enum game state. So it's like something like start opening. What do we call it? Intro, playing,
platting,
something like that. So you're either in the intro state, means you haven't started a game yet. You're playing, you started a game, and then once you've completed the game, you're completed. Or if you don't complete, you're starting back to intro again to start again. Something like that. And then what we could do is have a final game state value notifier. And our game state starts in intro.
Yep.
Something like that. And
looks
then
good.
When our game is complete, we set our game state value to be game state completed. Right? And now we can monitor our game state at a top level and show a different part, different like screen of our application. So we've called this home before. Let's call this playing screen. We can now have a stateless intro screen with a what column? I don't know, and
you're gonna put the instructions or something here.
Yeah, something like that, right? So it's just like here's how you play it. Keep flipping cards until you go, and then a button that takes them into the starting the game, right? So, and
how are you going to dispatch? How are you going to dispatch from one to the next? You're going to use a router or something simpler? Yeah.
I mean, we could just change the game state, right? Like, let's make this back. I'm just gonna. This is. Oh, why not? I'll do do I know? I don't want to do a theme extension. Background color. This is what you get when you have one entire app in your file. Don't do as I do. Is the answer.
Don't do that. No. You wanted to know about clean code? No.
Don't do that. All right.
This is the opposite of clean code. This is dirty code.
Quick code, right?
Quick
all right.
code. Yeah, there we
go.
go.
All right. So then we want to grab our text. We'll grab this as well. Again, change the theme and not do this, but you know what? We're here. We're doing it. Start game. So we'll have text, and the text is going to be, which was
just you know what to do. Just you know what to do.
Card flipper. Let's call that. Should we call it card flipper?
They call it card flipper. Card flipper lives in a world full of magic.
No.
Under the sea.
Anything but that. Style.
Did you get that in the UK? Did they bring Flipper over?
The 7? No.
Yeah, the 70s show.
Don't. No.
I was doing the theme song from Flipper. Now we're gonna get DMCA'd. Watch, we're gonna get a takedown on this show.
All right, so let's think. So what we can do now is wrap this in the builder. Build context, blah blah, and we talked about app state. App state is actually wrapping out in our main right now. I think that's where we did it. It is. Then we pass it into flip app. So where is app state actually being provided? I thought. Oh no, we don't use provider. What I'm talking about is we're actually using our flip app context. So it is enough. What we can actually do in here is change it to a value. Let's just make a value listenable builder, and then have the value that we're listening to be widget dot state. Was it app state? Oh, it's just app state.
Yeah.
Game state. Have game state. State.
Oh, I see. You're just gonna build the right subtree based on the current game state.
Yeah, and then what we can even do on this, which is really cool, is we can do the new
return switch. Yes.
Finally found the use of Dart 3 piece of code. Now we should be able to fill out the list. Do it for us. Let's have a look. So game state dot intro screen, and then we have what was the next one was playing and completed.
Now you could have done that by indirecting it and putting those constructors as constructor tear-offs in your enum.
Yeah.
Could have done that, but just letting the people at home know that there are other ways of doing this.
Tons of ways of doing these things. I'm kind of just thinking though that I want this to be playing or completed to be down the same screen. So can we do this weird thing where you do this?
Two vertical bars. Two
vertical bars, isn't it? Yeah. There you go. So that's again a new. So we're just saying match state of this or this, then show playing screen, right?
Right.
All right.
Right.
So, moving on. So now we've got that. We can now put a text in here. And say, I don't know, flip all the cards. All the cards. One that was going on there.
If you have questions about the coding, you can ask those questions. But we're just shut off for other questions now. So just questions about the coding.
Find all the matches. And then when we press this, we'll say flip app dot app state of context dot game state equals game state dot playing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't particularly like send this directly, so what we'll do is instead of doing this, we'll say start game. Start game, which we were calling previously at the beginning of the playing screen, can now set the game state to hit playing, and instead of calling start game at the beginning of the init state, that can go away now.
Okay.
In fact, we can use our mixin. I forgot we had that mixin, so let's use that up here. We need to make the stateful, but that's fine. There's no difference. Okay, and then this can go to so just app state. In fact, we can now just pass it by reference. Look at that. Well, all right. Let's move the mixing up.
Just blurry lines going by now.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Right.
Just
okay,
whoosh, whoosh, things go by.
All right. So you press the button, it does start game.
Yep.
Start game will change the state of our value notifier for game state. That will then be picked up by this widget, cause the rebuild, jump into this state of playing. And then what we can do is on the rebuild, we could now listen. So we don't, strictly speaking, we don't want this screen to rebuild or change when that game state changes. I guess we could have the button appear only when, I mean, what do you think? So we have the button only appear when it's completed?
Yeah, I would have gone there. Yes.
All right, so let's have a look. I don't even know when, how we
just add inline if you've got children. Why not just say if not complete? Don't show the button.
Yeah, but we still need to widget to rebuild, right? Because this doesn't rebuild.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right now, I could actually have it rebuild on the score, or actually let me show people how you do this. So I want both these buttons to rebuild on two different value notifiers, right? So the answer to this is to wrap our row in an animated builder of all things. That's what's called. And it has an animation. Now the animation is just a listenable, and you do listenable dot merge, and you give it your series of listables that you want for it to rebuild when they change. In this case, we want score, and we want app state, game state.
Wow.
So
this is cool.
It should.
But it's not.
Oh yeah,
cool.
no. It is cool because I forgot the square brackets. There we go. Now this will cause the rebuild to occur on this widget when either of those two change. We don't get the value. We still need to browse the value, but it's a way. It could be a way of grouping these things together. Grouping these things together.
Yeah.
Where am I? I missed the petty brace. Have I? All right. So now instead of having a value listable builder in here, we can take app store app state, put it straight in here. Take this text widget and return it directly. And then app state, and here we can say if app state dot game state equal to dot value equal to game state dot completed, then add the button. So this button only appears once we're in the completed state, and then this itself can go app state dot start new game, or take it back to the intro screen. I know we can choose that in a minute. And again, if we're passing the function with no parameters, we can pass it by reference.
Wow.
Right. So now we've done all this, I think we just want our confetti cannons, right? So how do we even use confetti? So we added it in there. You need to instantiate a confetti controller with a duration and a bunch of stuff. All right. this seems really complicated.
Uh,
Let's go into the repository.
yeah. Look for an example and just cut and paste the example.
Exactly. That's fine. So
that's why every package you submit to the pub should have an example just for Simon. That's really,
just
it's
for
there for him.
Not for those other people that want the examples, for sure.
No.
So it looks like there's this. I don't know. I'm piecing this together. First actual time I got to use this package. I've seen it for years, and I've never found a reason to use it. So this is quite fun. Let's see. So okay, so we start up, we create it, and dispose of it. Okay, and then confetti widget. Okay. So
it's too bad Flutter Animate doesn't have a confetti adapter. That would be kind of cool.
So do we wrap this whole thing in confetti widget? And we give it the controller. And then we give it how it should use it. So where was that example? Again. All right, so, oops. I feel like I want these things to go in from the left and from the right. So let's see what the bottom center was. What was that one? Bottom center. Okay, so blast direction, emission frequency, number of particles. Okay, so I guess we'll just take all these lovely parameters.
Let's drop them right in.
And drop them right in. And this is going to be math. This is from the math package. Oh, did I already? I think I include math. Oh, sorry. Scroll too far. All right.
Wow.
So, so that's going to be straight up. So we actually want what?
Which way was that? That's
I know.
Is that down? No, wait, up.
So
zero.
now
Zero's down, right? No, zero right. I can't
do controller left or confetti left. I guess we do a confetti right as well. Sure. Left and right. And then I guess we wrap this twice. I have left and right. And then the only difference in their parameters is going to be this. Okay, it's divided by 4, but yeah, whatever. Let's see. We'll just use these standard parameters. And then we just need to have these fire off when we change the completed state. Now, we don't want to put this in the UI because it's what you call a side effect of the state changing. So instead, what we want to do is register a callback. So in here, we can say on game state changed. If app state dot game state value is equal to game state completed, and we want to, I guess, start play. There you go. Play our confetti. Left and right. And then we need to have this callback when that game state changes. So we say app state dot game state add listener our function, and then we need to make sure that we, when our widget goes away, that we remove our listener.
Wow.
Simple as that. So now we're listening to game state, and when it changes, if it's completed, then we fire our confetti cannons. Well, let's see if it works.
That still looks easier in RiverPod when you do that stuff, but that's okay. It still works. It's all good.
I mean, to be honest though, you could also just do like a little like extension on the value notified to do this in place on a widget.
Ooh,
so
look at that.
Card
flipper.
So I think so first of all, let's my screen is like, I'm not accounting for anything. No, you try and run some mobile, it'd be huge, but whatever. 54, and then let's put a size on this as well. Like this, 54 something, and then we'll give ourselves a bit of space. And then main axis alignment.
Diagonal. They're missing that option.
And what we're actually missing here is the additional space at the bottom. Center it because of the gap in here and here. So it feels a bit more centered now, but normally we want it up higher. So there's actually a trick here. We can actually wrap our column in an align widget. And that alignment widget can actually be our own alignment. So 0, 0 is the center. If we make this main axis size small, minimum, should I say? This is now centered. Now, if I put on the layout boundary here, pardon me, let's see what we've got is we've got the line widget giving us these yellow arrows, and then our column with our paddings on the top and bottom. So what we actually can do, first of all, we can remove this, but this will feel uneven because of the spacing. That's why it's in there. And instead what we want to do is move it up the screen to make it feel a bit nicer. So that's negative 0.25, puts it at 25% up the screen. Into the upper portion. And you can change this number to whatever you want to get the right feel for whatever you're doing, right? So this would be the top 1/3. That feels right to me. So you don't have to use the pre-made alignments. If you look in here, you've got your alignments of top left, center right. And you can see the numbers that it's using, and you can just put anywhere fractionally in between those.
Right.
So that's how you can make that kind of adjustment yourself without a lot of hassle. And if we turn off those borders, now it feels a lot better. It's just a visual thing. All right, so start game. There's actually another trick here as well. I do briefly want to touch on this. I feel like it's worth it. And that is, let's say you want start game to always appear in the center and the text above to always align top from that. People seem to find this a trouble doing this. I just want to show you how you would do this briefly. I don't particularly want to lose what we've got here. So I'm going to take what we've got. Let's test it first and I'll come back to that because people seem to have trouble. All right. So first of all, I've made a boo-boo there with what I was putting in my string. So let's go back. It's dot value. Whoops. There we go. Let's turn off our borders. All right. So if I play the game, I've just noticed that these are flipped. So we actually we're flipping the card, and then the contents of the card is always flipped the wrong way. So let's briefly fix that and just wrap this with a transform dot scale. Now the x by -1. Flip them. If you want to know, that's how you do that. All right, so now let's run again. Trash can, face.
All right.
This.
-1 was the guy in IT crowd. You need some indication that it was actually a match, though, because you don't know. Well, I guess because it doesn't flip back.
They flip back, right? And
yeah, I guess. Wow.
No confetti cannons. Yeah.
No confetti.
But next
No
came
confetti.
up. So what went wrong?
I don't know.
Oh. That's not good.
You won that one too. Look at that. Instantly, you won it.
So when we start the game, what happened there? That's kind of interesting. Let's have a look. What happened there?
That was a good one.
So when we
That
start
was
the game,
good.
we randomly select them and create new data. And they're all set to flip false. The widgets are not. So the widgets are keeping their flip state. So that
makes it easier. That's a lot easier game. Maybe you want to take it easy the second round.
We're gonna. I mean, look, we can fix this. The answer to this is let's get rid of the state from the front end, and instead of having a flip state, the state reacts to. So we've kind of got two states here. This flipped flag is kind of it's because we did the flipping before we had the app state. So I kind of have a feeling that this flip state, we should get rid of it. And if we get rid of that, then what we're essentially doing is we could probably get rid of the high card as well. Should we do this? I think that's the proper way to do this. So when we start up, we look at widget data match to show should it be flipped or not. But when we did update widget, it looks for matched. Hang on a minute. Show back. Oh, if it's not matched, okay. Let's leave our flip flag for a second. And basically, the problem here is we don't ensure that it's going the other way. Reverse. Right. And then the flipping on animation change. Show back is updated when it flips either way. I think we'll get rid of that. All right, I think that will fix this bug. Hang on, let's see. Start game.
You need a cheat mode where it tells you what each card is.
Well, because
that's hard.
Oh, goodness, where am I? Here we go. This one and this one.
Hey, finally.
No. That one. That one and that one.
You're getting better. Oh, you're just getting fewer. That's easier.
We should have it deduct points on a non-match.
No.
Okay, so next game.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So that's kind of cool. However, you saw the back of the cards.
Oh.
You saw them when they flip, right? So I think again, it's that kind of thing of what we probably want to do.
If you watch really carefully, you already have the matches, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
I think the answer to this right now is simply we can we would introduce a different state variable. I don't want to do that right now. So the answer to this right now is simply to take them back to the intro screen when they want next game, basically.
Yeah, okay.
That's really where we're going to go with this. So let's go down to our button.
They might have forgotten the instructions too. So
exactly, of course,
that'll be helpful.
We'll just make a little function here, and we'll do it properly and say this should go to on next game pressed, and then up here. We need to see why our confetti cannons are. I think they might be firing off screen, and I've got my things wrong. On next game pressed. Oops. And then we'll set app state game state to equal game state dot intro, which will rebuild the UI because of that top level listener, and will show us the intro screen. No animation. We could add animation to the top level. Yeah, or flip them. As Richard said, or flip them back when we reset the game. Now that means that if we want to flip them back from the logic of the game, we need another additional game, some additional state to have that work. We could also we could also say when the game is complete, we flip them, not on new game. Let's just see what we do here. So I'm going to flip these around and see if that makes any difference whatsoever.
It might be you're shooting right from the right side.
Yeah, that's what I was
left from the
thinking.
left
The
side.
off screen, basically, but we'll see. No,
Now you need to play the whole game AI in here. Yeah, we should get Chat GPT in here to solve the puzzle.
No, stop! I've heard over here about AI. Save me.
You would have to play the game for thousands of hours to figure out how it's played. It would just start out pressing random buttons and still no confetti. And now no next game either.
Yeah, what did you do, Randall?
I didn't. I've just sat here. I'm backseat driving. I'm pointing out the turns. That's all I'm doing.
I'm actually wondering if I was double clicking there and I've messed up the state. Like I need to go through this. We always seem to be rushing it though, but let's see. This one. Oh, I know why. Hang on a minute. We still have that delay in here that I put in temporarily. I think we do. Oh, we do. Oh, what was I doing? Remove. This was so that it checked the flip cards only once the card had flipped over. I think. Because I put the animation and the animation is quite slow right now. I think the answer to this is add it to the flip cards and then do like an update score or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the problem with this is it says, oh, when there's two flip cards. So they can actually start flipping a third and a fourth card, and then it's going to try and match the first two always. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely not ideal to kind of like do it like this. I think for the moment, though, it works. I would definitely refactor this now, thinking about the logic. But let's do this. So update score. We want it so that once an animation has completed, we update the score. So this is how we do this at stay. Update score. So when the animations are complete, it runs update score. That's the correct way to approach that. Others on your tapping of the card. If the card flips back, it doesn't update the score. That's fine. That's based on the match state. I think we don't need to check to see the match cards only on tapping. Only on tapping do we need to do that. So let's hope that makes a little bit more sense now. And then duration of this card flip. Let's make that quicker. 250. All right. Let's see. Start again. Start game. Oh, do you know what we don't do? Do we reset when we start a new game? No, we don't. So when we start a game, we actually want to reset we do set all card values, but we don't set score. It equals 0. Yeah. Start again. Right. Oh, so much better.
Pretty.
It's interesting, actually. We you don't get enough time to now
see the card
because as soon as they fail, it does it. So we do actually need a delay in there.
Yeah, right. It's like, what was that card? All I know is it didn't match.
I don't know why I feel like I must have skipped part of this. It does just do play. So have I
think you need a state machine for the cards. You've only implemented it sort of ad hoc in a couple of different angles of it, and they're intersecting and overlapping each other.
Yeah, for sure. I want to know why my confetti cannons aren't blasting.
Yeah, that's important. Did you start the?
That's more important right now. I don't want to keep doing this until they work.
Did you start the animation anywhere?
Where is this? Wait a second. Does this emit from the center? Hang on. How is this supposed to work? Directionality. Display target. I have a feeling. So these are being placed in bottom left, bottom right, and all this kind of stuff. Confetti widgets. Are they just painting outside their bounds? Is that how that's working? Could be. So maybe we need to let's do a stack instead. Stack. Make sure that we can get one working, and then and then come back to this. Hang on, let's see. So if I convert to children, and we'll take this one out.
Oh, I had a hard out. Ow. And we're past it.
Whoops.
Yeah, I got a meeting right now, so I got to go.
All right, man. I'm going to see if I
right.
get this working and then call it an end. So.
All right. Great. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next week. Come back in 165 hours. Bye.
Indeed. Let's do what's it? Actually, we can go expand. Makes more sense. Yeah, I liked. I agreed, Richard. Like we do need to add. We were going to add a timer before and stuff, but. So it's what's this left? This is align alignment dot on the left. I need to put delay on that. I'm not even seeing them before I have to, that one and that one. I get like a split second to decide if I've seen it or not. It makes for a quick game, I guess. Hey, okay. So I need a button. I need what we're gonna do is so I don't have to keep completing it because it's bugging me. So on next game played, we'll have not reset the intro and instead play the confetti cannons and a hot restart so I can do this to see. Actually, it's going to call set state as well to rebuild. Let's do that. Why are you going straight up? Okay, there's a cross, right? So oh, right. Whoa. That's what I wanted. This will be. Whoops. M&A. Like it's not wider dispersal. It's lighter. Or maybe the minimum should be that. Alternative. Don't know what I like now. Let's knock the number of particles back to 100 and work out y out negative 1.75. Why are you not displaying correctly? On left. Oh, because I'm thinking. Why are you not entering the screen? Okay. That's annoying. Oh. So he's the working degrees. I hate radians. That's shallower. So now I have the same emit. Okay. It's quite good, isn't it? I think we'll have that. Don't like these numbers though. Yeah, it's maybe look at that. We have numbers that work. We had them that work. Yeah. Okay, I'm good. So let's just adjust our logic so the next game only appears once we're ready. And then our next game state only adjusts intro. And finally, that delay that we want on the flipping of the cards before it checks. I mean, we can just put a delay in score. I think it's not checking the score when the card is flipped. So we want it to check, but only to flip the cards back once the delay has taken place. We also probably only want it to actually, really the logic of this is all messed up right now. It could do with a rewrite. But we actually only want to allow them when they tap on the card to flip the card. Instead of adding and removing from a flipping of card, we say flip card when you tap on it. And then that's when it does the animation and the check. And the card doesn't, you cannot flip the card back. So tapping on it does not flip it back until you've chosen another card, then it flips back. So you're forcing the state. So this kind of like remove flip card goes away. And you either tap on two and then it checks and flips them back, or you don't and it doesn't. I think that makes sense to me. The controller will ensure that they're set right. And then hide card will flip it back. So remove flip card. We just remove this. And there's not two checks. And when you tap on a card, it's not flipped. It changes flip state. And why do we have this? Why do we even have a local state? I don't think we actually need it anymore, do we? Because it was only happening for the toggle. I guess we could say if controller status is at the beginning. Dismissed. Then we start the controller animating and animate when it changes. And once it flips over, once it flips over, we want to check hard this. Let's go with that. Don't need that. Don't need that. All right, so check card is now update score. We changed to check card, and this combines the two features of checking the card and adding the flip card. So let's go. These two things get added back together again. becomes card. So it checks it. If they don't match, rather than hiding the cards, we'll say delay. To future. And this delay is the delay we want to pause on the screen for the non-match cards. So we'll say, what? 1 second. All right, let's try it. Start game. I broke it. So check card. If there's not one already in there, it doesn't add. It shouldn't add. And I guess the result is that we don't want to animate it. I think there's probably two things here. We say when it's matched, it's flipped, when actually the state of the card is flipped. All right. Let's. Who wants this to continue a little bit longer, or shall we undo those most recent changes and then push the code? How many we got? Got a few people watching. Anyone interested? Should we continue? I'm not seeing any yeses. I know there's a delay in the stream, so I'll be patient. Yeah, what we probably want to do, have a thumbs up. Any more? So let's see. Yeah, so when we tap, we actually want it to... What the hell has happened here? They never flip back. What have I done? Let's have a look. When complete, check card this. So you can't tap on a card and flip it back, which is correct. If it's 2, then it does a check. Otherwise, it doesn't. So I think maybe there should be... We need the 2 to compare to. So yeah, so really we the state is really the key here, right? Like, again, what's happening here is our state of our game is getting out of sync with the display of the widgets, and that's because they're not really in sync. So I think that again, this is the normal thing that you get with apps. We want the state of the UI to be representative of the state of the game is in. When we adjust cards and replace them, it does actually rebuild, and we get a new card data here. So card data has a matched basically meaning that you can no longer interact with it because it's been matched. You can't flip it. So that's how we deal with that down here. Is there anywhere else where we deal with matched? There isn't. So what we actually want to do here is have a separate flag saying flipped. Okay, So now we have a flip flag. Let's go back. So each card has a flip flag, and if it's matched or if it's flipped. So I think we'll just change this to be a get from here and say all get show front. So if it's matched or flipped, then we're showing the front of the card. And we get to reuse that up here. We're going to get rid of our hide card interface. Only for that. The card that we want to pass is always going to be widget data. And I think that kind of answers this. So now, rather than card interface, we pass card data. The interface was to make this interactive with the front and sort of the front and back end. We don't need that now, so we don't need this interface. So the flip cards we no longer need either, because the all card state contains which cards are flipped. So we can put that out. But again, it should actually be named parameters. Okay, so now we need to change our logic here. Remove flip card. Don't we actually need that either, do we? Because you don't actually remove when it flips around. They change the state themselves. Okay, so now we come back to the check card, right? So we say card. So let's say replace card that we've been given with our replacement, which is going to be card copy with flipped true. So by doing that, it updates the state, which updates the cards, which updates the UI, and so on. So then we want to say how many cards are flipped. So flipped card count equals all cards dot value dot could do a fold. Well, it should be like a count where. That would be really helpful. Length where. Basically, we can do a where, which adds a filter, right? And this ends up being card. And so card is flipped, and length. Right. All right, so now we have the flip card count. That's 2. Looking at this, if we just want the flip cards, which looks like we do temporarily, so we say flipped cards equals this dot list to list. And our flip card length gets reduced to this, so let's bring it back in line. And finally, we can make it flip card 0, which is the data. All our card behavior works the same. We don't want to be able to click on a match card. That's fine, we've done that. I guess we don't want to be able to click on like 3 cards. So check card needs to go, are there already 2 flip cards before trying to flip another? So this kind of remarks this back to being a more. That's kind of annoying. All right, so we want to say if flips get the current list. Let's get the current list. That's what we can do. Let's get this is going to be a new list. So we get the current list and say if flipped cards dot length is equal to 1, is less than 2. Well, is greater than or equal to 2. It should no, it should be equal to 2. 1 is 2 straight away. Yeah. So if it's greater than, if it's equal to 2, return. You can't go forward. Otherwise, we replace that card and we say flip cards. Add card. This is local scope, and we know it's going to be 2 because if it's because it could be 1 the first time, right? Okay, yeah. So flip cards is equal to 2 when you get to this point before we add it. It's wrong, and after we add it, it's 2. Great, we want to continue. We can now say something like if flip cards dot length is less than 2, return, and do an early return. That just essentially flattens out the function. So let's comment this out. All flipped cards. We already have 2 cards flipped. Flip. Next. Flip. Selected card. We now have enough cards to match. And if they don't, so if they do, then we clear the flip cards, which we don't actually have to do anymore. We replace those 2 cards as being matched, and then we want to delay and then do another replacement on those cards. So this is now going to be we need to replace first and second. Do we? No, we don't. I'm going to say if they match, they stay. If they're not matched, then we flip them. Yeah, so this is perfect. And then we say flip to false. All right, I think we're good. Let's start it. I have an error. Let's fix that. Oh yeah, named. There we go. Start. All right, start game. And we break. What do we do? Replace card. Non-inclusive range. We didn't find the card because we're trying to replace a replacement. So that's my fault. So what we actually want to do here is we want to return card data and return the replacement, which is now the new item in the index. We could also compare the items. So index of is currently using all, I think, all the fields or identity match. So that's why that really fails right now. But let's go back to our logic here. So we flip a card and then we flip it again. Let's let this continue. Go away. Yes, you break. Right. Then we want to say card equals this to replace our local scoped one, so that we're adding that to flip cards. And then these only get flipped once, so we don't care about the remainders. That should solve that issue. Let's see. Start. Flip, flip. Cool. So if I try and click on the why did I click on the third work? But at least they don't stay. Okay. Well, I mean, it's kind of working. I shouldn't want to flip all of these. Yeah, look, now it's broken. Oh, right. I'm going to park it here. I need to get some food. Right. I'm going to post this, and if you want to try and fix it, you can fix it. How's that? Right. Well, thanks for joining myself and everyone on today's stream. I'm going to post that link, and it's going to be over the top of the same link that we were just looking at, the same gist link. So bear with me here while I do that, and then I will post this on screen and in the chat for everyone to use, everyone to have a play around with. Update gist. And let's put another date on this. It's the 24th and 31st. Wow, where's the year gone? Okay, link is in the chat, and I'll bring that up on screen for the ending credits. There you go. Thank you again for joining me and the team and everyone. And let me know if you solve the lovely state problems there, because otherwise we'll be investigating next week. Feel free to post comments on the gist, and then we'll get to the next week. All right, thanks again, and enjoy your week, and I will see you in 160 odd hours, whatever it is. Yeah, see you then. Bye.